Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 11 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, who also enjoys a nice bath in a destroyed house. Joining me for this fine recording session are one Stephen Howard.
Whose intro can only be directly observed and therefore exist.
Amanda Howard.
Who could watch these episodes several more times before understanding what was happening.
One Josh Cox.
Chilling like a lilin.
Hey.
And last, but certainly never least, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, one Gary the Lady.
Just super excited to learn more about the fifth children. Interested to see how they interact with the other pilots during this crazy time. I think Shinji really needs to find a friend. Wait, I've just been had an urgent news bulletin. He is actually the bad guy. Okay. Also, it looks like the entire timeline in this show's introduction, backstory, and destruction of this character was in 17 minutes and 45 seconds. With that, he had the same amount of screen time and dialogue as one of the random NERV employees that no one knows their names. Boom.
Yay.
All
Good
right.
job. Applause.
Okay, well, we're going to try and pick up after that and discuss, what was it, episode 24 and 25 for this podcast recording. So starting off with episode 24. What do you got first, JC?
Number 24, The Beginning and the End, or Knocking on Heaven's Door, or The Last Cometh. A despondent Shinji encounters a kind-hearted boy named Kaoru, who quickly becomes his close friend. That's the end of the synopsis. Nothing else really happens this episode. Just a chill time, hanging out with some friends, meeting new folks, having a good time,
and taking bath in a dilapidated building too.
Right? Yeah.
Apparently, headquarters has a bat, like a sauna. It has like group bedrooms. Like,
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't have anyone who can find a 15-year-old in 7 days. Do we believe this?
Nah.
15.
I'm with Masato.
Actually, I don't know how old she is. Was I right?
Intentionally.
Is it
Yeah.
Well,
15?
14 or 15, I can't remember.
I said 15, but honestly, I'm now realizing I don't know where I got that number.
We'll go with
they're
it.
ageless.
They're ageless. They're children.
A teenager.
It's in the name.
Yeah.
We know.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened in these two episodes here, and
Yeah.
I am not even going to bother starting with any of my notes here because I'm just going to play the reaction game for these next couple of episodes here. Gary, though, looks like he wants to start off with something right away, though.
Okay, so my intro was literally, as I think I told them beforehand, before they was recorded, was between my first and the second watch. I was like, yeah, when I was watching episode 24 the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, the fifth children, like, it's finally a new pilot, and he seems to be getting along with Shinji and like kind of friendly. And then you're just like, what the fuck? Nothing can go good in this show. Like I just assumed he had another effed up backstory, but he is the danger.
He is the one who knocks.
He's the one who knocks. Also, while I'm watching it, I'm just like, how can I like tangle in a time clone like existence for this guy, and then it just like the normal rug being drug out from underneath you, and then like the ability to make some elaborate conspiracy theory. I was like, well, now that character doesn't exist anymore, so whatever.
So we were watching this episode earlier today to take notes on it, and with Amanda and I. And Amanda at one point goes, Steven. And I go, I don't want to hear it. And what don't you want to hear? What do you want to say? I have a conspiracy theory. I don't want to hear it.
I wrote it down. I can share it with you all.
I'm so eager. Go ahead.
I'm so eager too.
This is it's over a smaller thing, just more of a side thing. So I was watching the council Sele there, and I was like suddenly like, oh, you know what? My conspiracy theory is that Stonehenge was a way for a council to speak, and that's what they're doing now with
Oh.
their little circle of standing stones.
Yeah.
See
many-
Monolith Council for reference. I wrote down. So I don't know if this
How many
counts as a
pillars in
conspiracy theory or
Stonehenge?
not. Right?
There's
Oh my god.
wow.
I'll
The
take it.
council
I
used to
There's
think
be
it could be
12.
populated.
Let's
It looks
see.
like.
it.
So we get there is some conspiracy theories on this actual council thing too. So previously we had discussed the number of how many people were in the Seal Council. It previously had been 12. Every single time we've seen them in episodes prior to this one, there were 12 monoliths. Whenever Koar is talking to them, there are 15. Who
Who's
knows
Quar?
Karu?
Oh, Quar
Sorry?
is the 15th children.
Yep,
Didn't even
yep.
wasn't even
Karu-
around long
Karu
enough to learn his
Nagisa.
name.
You
So is
said there were-
Gendo one of the pillars, or is he separate? He speaks to the pillars.
Typically, he speaks to the pillars.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so it's typically 12 pillars that then in
So
that
there's
sound only monolith
15
mode.
15 when he's talking to them, and 12 the rest
15
of the
that
time.
Karu is talking to, and 12 previously.
Ooh,
Now, this is also a
that's
scene that ends up,
fascinating.
it was made, this is from that director's cut. You can probably tell if you're watching it that like the animation on that scene specifically is a little bit different compared to the rest of the show. It's a little bit more fluid and stuff. And yeah, that is from the director's cut stuff that is from that Death Rebirth movie stuff that then ended up going back into the episodes as director's cuts. So this typically, that seal conversation with Karu over the lake did not happen in the original aired version of the show.
Oh,
So it's one of those things like, was it just not continuity error? They just thought it would look cooler if there were 15, or is there some significance there? At this point, I don't know. It's just one of those weird things about that council.
maybe the extra stones allowed them to talk invisibly, and that's what upgraded it.
That's their Wi-Fi antennas. Shazi?
how did we know there was 15 there?
shows
Was it numbered 15?
There is
Yeah,
just a
it-
panning shot where you can count 15. Yeah, and I
Okay,
do believe
okay,
you see
so-
one that specifically says seal sound only 15.
Okay. I must have missed that detail or whatever, but yeah.
It's
Okay.
one, they don't bring a lot of attention to it. It's just one of those things that as I remember we were talking about it, and as I was going to update the conspiracy board that I've started now, and was like, okay, seal, there's 15, and then I was like, I don't think there's 15. So I went back to a previous episode, and yes, there was 12, and I looked back at it more, and it's always 12 until this episode. So yeah,
Mm.
good stuff.
Steven, I have to know, was waiting for my conspiracy theory all these hours later because he wouldn't let me share it with him earlier. He literally cut me off and was like, no.
He wanted to hold it. He wanted to enjoy it with everyone else for the first time.
I said I would
I
share
was-
it with you guys, and he was like, I can't wait.
I was just as disappointed hearing it now as I would have been earlier.
I didn't. I usually I just watch the episodes and take my notes at the same time, and I just come to it. I don't rewatch them, and I just take that first impact of watching.
I
This is
guess-
the first time I watched the episodes more than once, and I was like annoyed at Steven the whole time because I wanted to take my notes as I was having thoughts, and he made me just watch the episode. Just have your thoughts. So now you see what happens. I come up with conspiracy theories. Maybe you'll learn your lesson.
100% have learned my lesson. I was actually going to pose that question to the group. So I know that we actually had a discussion in our thread board about who was watching what, when, and how many times. And I was just wondering for the group, how many times did you guys end up watching this? So I watched each episode 3 times. I watched it once in Japanese, taking no notes. Once in Japanese with Amanda, just trying to kind of
English.
comprehend what was happening. No.
Yes,
And
it was in
then-
English today.
Yes. And then the third time, Amanda, was in English. And that's when I took notes.
Oh, you said you watched it with me, so I assumed that was what we meant. Sorry.
We watched it twice together. I don't blame you for forgetting I was there, but I was.
Said my name all 3 times, but whatever.
So in the defense of taking notes, as somebody who I did take notes the first time and the second time, these episodes were such a cluster that I had 4 bullet points for each episode. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't have any good conspiracy theories because I am just so just sailing the ship without any wind. So, Tyler.
I love Gary's random analogies there. I continued my 2 episodes, one time through watching it, just observing, and the second time too taking notes. But along with Gary, though, for the second episode we'll cover here shortly, episode 25, I literally wrote down like 5 or 6 points and went, "Yeah, I'm just going to stop here because I'm going to just." This is going to be, again, like I said at the beginning here, I'm going to be more reacting to a lot of stuff for these next couple of recordings that we do, just because stuff is just coming at you and you're just like, okay, Gary.
Okay, also, we talked about this before. The first time I watched it by myself, the second time my wife was in the room and she was making supper, I had to explain what this show was. So,
How did that go?
to Steven or Amanda, who weren't in this conversation earlier, if you had to explain after seeing the show once, these episode 24 and 25, knowing what was going to happen audibly and the screen, how would you explain this to someone?
Uh,
There was no nudity or anything really terribly graphic, but just a lot of confusing like emotions.
So how I would explain it is that a movie about mechs is about to hit a psychotic break with a fundamental philosophical distribution of ideas. And if that sounds confusing to you, yeah, you're getting what we're putting down here.
I think I described it as okay, so it's a show about mechs and robots and it's just lots of philosophical stuff, and everyone is crazy. Their children run robots, and everyone is crazy. The main character is like it's kid who his dad abandoned him. There's a girl who watched her mother commit suicide, and then there's a third girl who's a robot, and it's like this is confusing. And my wife has heard me rant about like I don't know what the hell's going on in the show. She's like, yeah, I've heard you complain about this show. But it's the
There you
first
go,
time
buddy.
I specifically, this show is so random as to when it goes off the rails or like random nudity that I've never felt comfortable watching with another person in the room. So Stephen and Amanda, do you guys watch with your kids with your kid in the room?
No.
Like,
Oh, fucking way. Are you
Absolutely
kidding
not.
me?
I admittedly, whenever the babies were just born and they like weren't really looking around, I watched Ava
Same.
at that point.
Yeah.
But like, and once they were like, "Oh, TV light, what's that?" I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
we can't have Eva on. This
That's
is
what
not
I
for
mean.
them."
She'll watch whatever you're watching. So absolutely not. We don't even bother. I mean, if she sees that I'm on talking to you guys, she's gonna come over and look into the computer.
maybe she learn Japanese from this. Just
Right.
blah 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 blah, and there's like, oh wow.
First word in Japanese will be anxiety, fear.
The 13th
Just as
Warrior
nightmare.
all over again.
Back to the original question. I ended up watching this episode. These episodes, I think I watched 4 times total. So twice I knew just to go in without any semblance of taking notes, and then the third time was like super pause heavy, taking a lot of notes, just making sure I understood like the chronology of the episodes as best as they present it. Because especially as the one person who's really completed the whole thing through End of Evangelion before, it's still a confusing set of episodes. And there are things that I can pick up and understand what they're saying because I recognize what they're referencing from later revelations. And I don't even know how Steven necessarily. I'm curious to know Steven's thoughts on episode 25 once we get there, knowing that he has seen it prior through the end of the series, but not End of Eva.
So that was actually one of the revelations that I made while I was watching 24 and 25 was that I do not remember what happens in episode 26. I remember as I'm going through episode 24, 25, I'm like, yeah, this is like the hard hitting stuff that I remember. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I don't remember what happens next. So I did not look any of it up. So I am basically in the same boat now. But
Fair enough.
it's,
So when
Yeah.
did you watch it the first time, Steven? Like you watched it is like in your 20s or like over 5 years ago?
It was 2 years ago.
Okay.
And that's what I'm
in 2 years,
imagining.
blacked
Steven,
out this entire show.
Steven watched a lot of TV shows, like both of us watched a lot of TV shows on our phones in the middle of the night when we were like nursing the baby and getting up
Yes.
with the baby every 2 hours
Yes.
during the night, keeping our sanity. So I'm imagining Steven watching this for the first time at 3 a.m. when you're barely understanding like who you are anyway. And I honestly really admire him for being able to do that. I don't think I had to resort to like stuff I'd already seen to make sure that
Well,
I
I
didn't.
will, but real quick, Gary, I will say before I did remember I watched this series and I went, I need something way easier. And I slipped a Full Metal Alchemist, which I've watched so many times. I'm like, I don't even have to pay attention to this and know what's happening. So,
You guys were talking about watching this while just sleep deprived, and my first watch through both episodes was at like in the middle of the night after playing Call of Duty as my wind down. And this show is not a good like wind down.
no, not really.
I just needed to jam it in because I knew I had to watch it twice, and I was like, it's Sunday night. I need to get a first watch in so I can get a second watch. And I was just like, oh my gosh. The first episode is just like confusing. The second episode, when we get there, is a whole nother basket of confusing when I was sober awake in the afternoon. But in the middle of the night, I was just like, just get me to the finish line. I don't know what's going on, but I just need to get to the finish line. Yeah. Do you want to jump into the specific questions on the episode? Or
Well,
do
I'm just
everyone have
thinking,
to answer the question on how many times they've watched?
I think maybe, but I think I have one more question for the group before we start moving more to this specific. And that's how, and we kind of already answered this, but how comfortable did you feel with understanding of where you were at the end of episode 25? Like we watched 24, we watched 25. How much of it did you think that you absorbed when you went through it? And I'll start off with this one. And I feel like I maybe got 50% of everything as I was watching it. As I watched it multiple more times, I'm like, oh crap, this is an entire different line of thought that has to be thought about that I'm not going to think about because there's just too much going on. So I'm especially for like JC, like how much did you guys think you absorbed?
Okay, I think this is a second episode question, but I think the first episode is just a crazy like cliffhanger, like it's just record scratch. The second episode is just like cerebral, like emotional, like fever dream. And so that I was kind of used to. So the fact that I didn't understand what the heck was going on, I was like, well, this is Evangelion. I
Par for the
maybe I will
course.
know more. I even said after watching the second episode, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna get anything more on another watch because it was just a fever dream. And on the first watch, I was like, this is a fever dream. And I think I caught some of the major points. On a rewatch, I was like, yeah, I caught all the major points. Like being completely asleep is the best way to watch that episode because your brain shuts off and doesn't go down all these rabbit holes. You're just like, oh yeah, like surface level. So much better to watch that episode at surface level. JC?
I would say the first time I watched these episodes, probably 10-15% is what I got out of them, compared to especially these last rewatches of just going full chronology, taking specific notes about what dialogues are happening and how they're explaining things like instrumentality. And even episode 24, there's a whole section where the monoliths are talking about like we the Lilin, the usurpers of the Black Moon, or whatever the fuck they're talking about. Like there's a lot of dialogue there that's very specific and sounds revelatory, that is all also brand new for things that we've never seen or heard of before. And it's just a lot of things going on there, and I definitely don't recall just being confused at these episodes.
What was your percentage on the first watch? 10 to
The very
15?
first watch, probably 10-15, like if
I
that.
would say like for me it was probably 5, but as I said, like surface level. Surface
Oh, yeah.
level, like they're dropping, and you don't even on a rewatch you catch all these like terms they keep dropping.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, oh, well, that isn't the first time you heard it. Like you hear it in this, like, crazy speech. I'm still in 24. The crazy, like, revelation speech, and you're like, oh, well, he dropped these this Lillian several times, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought he was crazy, and like everyone else in the show just drops terminology that doesn't make sense. It maybe makes sense in universe, but the writers make absolutely no reason to explain the microculture in the show. Like, it could have been a children's TV show, it could have been anything. Like, so 5%. Amanda, what's your percentage of understanding on the first watch?
I'm gonna say 5 to 10%, honestly, because wow. I mean, watching it
She's
through the
wow.
first time was definitely just a wow. And I feel like I could feel myself distancing myself a little bit just to be like, okay, hold on. I can't go down a fever trip right now. Like, let's just take a broad overview of it. And then on the rewatch, because we rewatched them in order, we went back to episode 24, and I was like, oh, thank God. This episode looks like it makes so much more sense compared to this episode. So I was actually like, oh, this is great. I watched episode 24. I'm like, oh, actually, it's not really great. There's lots of bad stuff in it, but like,
Yeah.
it was great compared to that. And then I started to watch episode 25 again and was just like, I can feel myself distancing again because I'm like, I cannot follow every single one of these without being either losing my mind or getting very depressed. So I had to like just carefully watch it. I think it'd be interesting to see after we finish the series, going back and watching it again and seeing what I catch.
Okay. Tyler, you just walked back. We can throw the question to you. What percentage of understanding did you have on the first watch through? JC said 10 to 15. I said 5 solid. Amanda said 5 to 10. I don't listen when Steven talks.
As a general rule, right?
I don't know. Sorry, Steven, what percentage did you say?
I like that
Did
one.
you not give
I
percentages?
no, I think it was. I said 50%, about 50.
Oh yeah, he did.
Okay.
So,
As this time he did.
what are we talking about? Are we talking about these two episodes,
first
the
watch
show
of
in
These two
particular?
episodes, yeah.
These 2 episodes.
Of these 2 episodes, how much
Understanding
do I
what's
understand what's
going
going on? Maybe about like 20-ish% there, of at least 24, 25. I was just like, this is just a philosophical nightmare that they're imposing on me here in this episode. So
Imposing on me.
Yeah, Amanda was saying that on the rewatch she enjoyed going back to 24 because it was much easier. And I would agree that like 24 and 25 are on to just different levels. But anyway, back to 24. Any other general questions? Otherwise, I had some questions about plot.
I have, this is maybe a terminology question, and I was afraid to look it up because of anything that could be tied to this show could be a spoiler.
Understand.
Absolutely.
Lilin culture. Now, I keep hearing the word Lilin. I'm thinking of Lilith, which is the Diablo 4, or the Diablo villain. That is Diablo there, basically. Spoiler in those games. But I was like, is that just another name for humans or flawed, sinful beings or whatever?
I assumed it was humans because based on a rewatch sentence of like, oh, Lillian's, you like to do this. And I assumed it was humans. Steven, tell us we're all wrong.
No, what I'm going to tell you is that I do not believe they have officially defined it yet. They have not officially told us what it is. So what you're getting are context clues. And I would say you're on the right track for context clues. Lilith, by the way, is not a Diablo 4 villain. Lilith was a...
No. Lilith is Diablo 4.
All right. It's also a theological reference to... Oh my God, I'm gonna have to look up exactly who Lilith is, but she's like one of the evil people in early Christian, or I should say early Abrahamic religion, I want to say. I don't remember why.
It's not ringing a bell.
I think you're just making shit up.
I probably am.
I can't speak to that, I guess. I will say we are told a little bit about this. The monolith, the 15 monoliths when they're talking to Kaoru over the lake, say We speak of Lilith, the progenitor of humanity, the usurper successors who arose from the Black Moon, and Adam, progenitor of the legitimate successors, the angels of the now lost White Moon. So Lilin is where humanity has come from. Adam is not the god that humans came from. Adam is where angels come from.
Oh yes, I
Yeah.
wrote down something about that little comment.
Yeah,
I
you
said
might have
I
forgotten.
remember
There's
something
so
about a
much other
moon.
stuff that happens.
Real quick, so the where Lilith comes from actually does make some sense in that context. So Lilith, and this is off Wikipedia, so I apologize. Lilith is cited
Fake
as
news.
having been banished from the Garden of Eden for not complying with and obeying Adam. So she was theoretically Adam's first wife, but wouldn't comply or obey with Adam, so was banished from Eden and paradise.
Okay,
Just the
Steven, I hate to
biblical
pull.
religious references.
Yeah,
in
I'm
this
gonna have to
show
go.
Just make me.
I'm gonna go look at our Wikipedia, like when this is all done, of this show, Christianity, theological religion there, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I got a
you.
Wikipedia religion for you. It's called the Bible.
And on the eighth day, God created a Remington bolt-action rifle.
Steven, I hate to pull a high school teacher here, but I can hear them in my head saying Wikipedia doesn't count as a source.
Yeah, I know that, but what I was also gonna it is a. I know this is a real thing. I know that Lilith was was a theological figure for Christianity. This one specifically says Judaism, but
Okay, I can't like
Abrahamic
search
religion.
it and prove you wrong or anything because I'm scared of spoilers. So I will take your word for it.
If you Google Lilith, or if you get don't Google Lilith, but if you Google Lilith, you will get probably not in the first top 5 searches will be Lilith from Evangelion. It's going to be from religion. It's going to be from everything else.
Well,
I
There's a
believe
fair.
it'll probably be from a video game. Just
That's
my
fair.
personal opinion. It's going to be from Diablo.
okay, but I did want to point out that little tidbit that we did here in the council of the soul of Adam was salvaged into cow. Oh, hold on. What's the pronunciation guide? I gotta check my guide here. Kauru. Karu. Hey, there we go. You know, he only existed for 17 minutes, so it was a little harder.
Yeah.
Karu. The soul of Adam
17
was
minutes,
salvaged.
45 seconds.
Okay, sorry. Into Karu, but the body of Adam was salvaged into Gendo. And I was like, Gendo?
I heard that too, and I thought it was.
Talk to the hand.
Talk to the
Yeah.
hand.
I figured that had to do something with what was going on with his hand when he's sitting there talking to Unit 1.
Yeah.
I'm seeing the light bulb come on with Amanda there.
So, because we remember the first time rather that we saw Adam was the Magma Diver episode, right? Or no, sorry, the Asuka arrives in Japan episode whenever they're on the boat and Kaji hops in the jet and is like, peace, and takes that little tiny embryotic thing and they're like, this is Adam. And the next time we know, we're being told this giant white creature underneath Terminal Dogma is Adam. As we find out at the end of this episode, Karu is like, oh, hey, what's up, Adam? Wait a minute. This isn't Adam. This is Lilith. And then Adam is, as we know, is in Gendo's hand now. So, yep.
Well,
Sorry,
that was
everyone.
really
He's laughing
revealing.
because he looked at my
it's
face.
so-
And I'm just like, what the fuck is going?
It's just-
saying?
Yeah, it's a
You
new piece of the
can't-
puzzle,
even if
and my
you-
mind is not putting anything together still. I'm glad I'm watching with smart people like you guys, at least.
I'm glad I'm watching with smart people
insane.
like you guys and JC and not myself, because I would be.
Steven
just-
just call me
it's
smart, or
gross.
I didn't get
Yeah.
excluded. I don't know why, but I'm the one who gets this show the least.
Gary, you'll be happy to know that you made my notes today for this first episode because I wrote down that I can hear Gary getting annoyed at the wait
Oh, yeah.
at the end of the episode.
As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, Gary's going to hate this.
I was like, Gary probably has it timed, but at least there's
I
music.
did on the rewatch. That is concurrent with the 17 minutes 45 seconds. At the end of that 17 minutes 45 seconds is also the
That's the timer.
approximately 1 minute and 3 seconds that we're on the same image with a song in the background that is Ode to Joy
Oh
Had a
my
long
god, I
discussion
hate you
before the
so
fucking
much.
episode started.
I
Because
hate you
Steven
so
thinks it's some
much.
Beethoven song that Ode to Joy ripped off and something, 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 blah,
Beethoven is a
blah,
Saint
blah.
Bernard, Steven. That doesn't even make sense.
I used to love
Oh,
those movies.
I hate you so much. I hate you all so much. It's so hurtful.
It was so good, I think it got at least 2 sequels.
Straight to video sequels, if that too.
No, I think Beethoven 2 went to the theaters. I think I might have went
could-
to that in the
you
theaters.
could be
Beethoven
right.
the third, probably straight to video.
Is that what
That
you're
is
referring to,
something
Steven?
worth Googling in this.
Entirely.
Steven,
So
can you
everyone-
please go to Wikipedia for Beethoven the second and see if it was straight to video?
Well, what I will tell you is that it was Beethoven's Ninth that was playing. It was not Ode to Joy. It was Beethoven's Ninth, and that is what has been playing. I would.
Does Beethoven's Ninth have anything to do with religious or angels and any that
Does actually.
connotations?
It's a religious song, like most songs were back then, but it's I wouldn't say it's not what we imagine. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, all that sort of stuff. It's different. I actually looked up the German lyrics earlier today because I made a vow to myself that next time they start singing that in church, I'm going to break out with the German version and just start belting that in church. But
Fun
guy
fact:
in
the
church.
vow was not to himself; it was out loud and to me.
yes. But anyways, no, it's still a religious theme to it, but it's different. It's more exotic and harder to follow religion.
For our listeners' benefit, Stephen very quickly was determining exactly what Beethoven song this was from, and assuming that everyone in the group was on the same wavelength, he just BM'd them a couple Beethoven memes, and this has led to quite a bit of argument today
I'm so disappointed.
over the rest of the group having no clue what he's
I learned
talking about.
something new. That
I-
Steven is not only a history and war buff, but he's also a music history snob. That Beethoven's Ninth would become like a major sticking point in something that ruined the world. Okay.
You wait till we get to episode 25 and I break out the quantum mechanics, and you think that's a joke, and it's not.
Oh god.
Thanks for increasing my. Also, Steven, I'm gonna leave this last note about singing German in church. Is that maybe that's a no-go in general? Speaking in any tongues that people can't understand in church is definitely a no-go. You might get blessed with holy water or maybe dragged out back.
At the same time, maybe there'll be someone in this South Dakota town that's just like, oh, that guy might be an Evangelion fan. I don't know. I might have to
That's
talk to him.
Anyway, I don't know where we went off topic on this, but it went.
Steven's
I
fault,
think
Beethoven.
we were a little bit talking about the body and the soul of Adam and how they were split a little bit, which I think is a overall process that I don't know that we've had it specifically clarified before. That basically they can take the soul of something and put it somewhere else, and they can take the body of something, move it somewhere else. So like the soul of Adam is in Karu, and the body is this separate thing. And
Conspiracy theory. Maybe this is why Gendo thinks he's got, or why he has this god complex. He literally thinks he's a god right now because he's got the piece of body of Adam in his hand.
well,
Sorry, Gary. I shouldn't be stealing your conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theory? Perhaps it's a side effect of being a time clone.
the side effect is that you just grow a small embryonic Adam.
That's how he
the-
became
with
a
the God
time clone. He broke God in half, and it gave him the ability to travel through time. Honestly, the time clone theory is completely bashed at this point, but at the time it was really good. Now I don't. I'll have to figure out something new, and then for the next episode, that I can completely make up some random plot line. But you've enlightened me that somehow Adam is in Gendo's hand and the soul is like all of that straight over my head.
I mean, there were things that even on I mentioned I watched them 4 times, and the third time when I was taking notes and stuff, I was seeing lines that I had not even on the previous 2 watches of this session that I hadn't caught them then. So like I said, they are dense episodes, and it's
Yeah.
just so many lines just fire off real quick, and they'll have an exchange with a one-liner to another character that is incredibly revelatory. So if you just happen to miss that one line because you're thinking about the previous 7 lines that broke your mind, that's it. You just missed that little revelatory piece of information. So that's just gone. It's wild. So dense in these episodes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other general things? Otherwise, I have plot questions.
Pen went to safety. That was nice.
Yes.
I have that notated
I have
as
it
well.
in my note is in big capital letters. Pen squared. No.
Safety first, Steven.
I know.
He gets to go live with the class president. That's all right.
You guys' love
Other
for
than that,
Pen.
Pen Pen's the
I
best.
feel like you guys
I'll fucking
hold
fight you
Pen
right
in
now.
the same regard I hold that one
Yeah,
guy.
Joffrey.
That one guy. Yeah.
Kaji. Like I think Kaji is like the most interesting most interesting sane character of the show. Pen, someone who doesn't even speak English, you think is the best character of the show.
Pen for king.
Pen was worthy of your affection, Gary.
Just
All right. Do we want to talk about that
there's
scene
too much
yet?
other chaos going on for me to enjoy Pen. Maybe there's just too much other chaos that I can't truly enjoy Pen. Steven, sorry, you were saying.
No, I just wanted to say, so I have a fair amount of notes, pretty deep notes about "Are you worthy of my affection?" and what it is actually said as well in English, because it is said different in English than what it is said in Japanese.
You're talking about the worthy of his grace part, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. In English, it is "You are worthy of my grace," which, as we know, if that is Adam, and Adam is giving grace to Shinji, is that the kind of finding that one right person in Sodom and Gomorrah, and therefore deciding I won't in fact destroy the world now. And I mean, unfortunately, that's a real biblical reference, right? And is my thought there, and maybe this is a conspiracy theory, is that Waru finds yeah, I know I pronounced it wrong there, sorry, but he finds Shinji. I don't know if he was expecting to find someone like Shinji who actually he would like, or he would quote unquote deserve his grace. And when he finds and gets that grace, that allows him to try to stop himself or decide at the very end of this episode that he is willing to die for humanity. And that saves humanity. Shinji bringing grace upon himself saves humanity because Kawaru at that point wants to save Shinji because Shinji is worthy of grace, therefore other Lilin must be worthy of grace.
Revelations in this episode was that maybe this was intentional, and maybe the Stonehenge evil gangsters unleashed the last angel on purpose or something. Like, it's the scientist lady who I'm going to look up her name, Ritsuko, says right before the realization that he becomes a super floating enemy. Crap. He is probably the final messenger. And on the I didn't catch it to the rewatch, and I was like, oh yeah, like they've been very, very adamant and talking about the last angel, the 13 angels that were
17th.
promised. 17th, sorry.
It's all right.
Math. Anyway, that they know that there's supposedly one more angel left in prophecy, which is a whole nother bucket of like, I don't understand where there's prophecies, but anyway, there's one more prophecy of another super monster, and that maybe the evil council decided to unleash the last monster so they knew it existed or something. I don't know. Also, he was born on the same day as the second impact. Who? Tyler, Steve?
I had some. I was gonna kind of mention like the whole grace and affection thing. I back to the grace discussion there, that like I personally didn't see the grace side of it until you kind of pointed out that way. The affection side was more my sticking point, because I also knew from kind of once when Eva first came to Netflix, there was a big controversy online about the changing of some of the wording. The original Japanese is something about how he's basically saying you're worthy of my love, and but it's in a way that's like, oh, I love Coke, I love Mountain Dew, like it's a less like romantic style love. It's in adapting that, they ended up changing the word to more of affection and things like that. And even like whenever he says like, oh, it means I like you, that also means I love you. And so there's these things that, so knowing that controversy going in, I was seeing it more from that affection side, and still for the same purposes that he doesn't expect to find so much in common with Shinji, or not necessarily common, but to find so much to feel about Shinji as he meets him and decides from Shinji's interactions with him that humanity is worth saving, and to go from there. But yeah, I didn't necessarily think of it from the whole grace aspect.
And I'd like to know the original intent of what the creators had here, because I agree. When you're translating things from different languages, nuances have great meanings. I mean, we have one word for love in the United States, in English, I should say, and many other cultures have multiple words for loves. You have love of self, love of friends, you have all this sort of stuff. So when you're trying to impart what type of love he is trying to say, I mean, that's, you even get it in historical context now, where somebody will say, "Oh yeah, he says that he loved him. He must have, been sexually involved." And it's like, no, that's not always the case. It's sometimes it is something different. And was the changing from worthy of my affection to worthy of my grace trying to capture that phonetic nuance where they were more trying to say, because love, I mean, when you talk about love, that's all they talk about in church is God's love, is Jesus's love for you, is all that sort of stuff. And they don't mean it in a sexual way, they mean it in a higher sort of way, which if you have 15-year-olds watching on Netflix might not, in fact, hit them in the face. So changing that to grace is, I don't, or even affection. I mean, we talk about affection now, and that's still sexualized. So is grace the only way they could really get that around? And that's just maybe more of a linguistic conversation. And I find it very interesting.
Another interesting thing I found when I pulled up IMDb tonight, looking at the episode, one of the quotes on there, they listed as "You have my regard," which was not the one we heard in English or Japanese. So I don't know if it's a different dub or an earlier or later one or something. But
Yeah, I'm
so
guessing it's one of the earlier ones. Yeah.
yet another word that they threw in there.
Send my regards.
And I guess that partially leads to one of the questions I had. Like, so I watched that episode, and I feel like there are homosexual overtones essentially to the Shinji and Kaoru relationship, and especially I feel like that's why a lot of the controversy happens whenever they get rid of the word love in that situation, is that people who felt like that was a representation thing for a homosexual moment on television is now gone because it's no longer love. To me, it's still very much there that Shinji has this higher feeling
Yeah.
for Kaoru
Mm-hmm.
that he hasn't necessarily experienced in any other way that we've seen. Like he falls on Ray's body earlier and is like smitten, and he has this motherly affection toward her that he even earlier in this episode is like trying to reconcile. But it's completely different. He is full red faced, everything, talking to Kaoru and just stumbling over his words and putting himself into rom-com situations. So it still feels extremely colored in that way. And I wasn't sure, especially given that you guys were seeing it without knowing this, love backstory, essentially, how well that read exactly. Steven?
I remember watching this the first time, and I caught those overtones very strongly, and I was actually pretty impressed. I was like, "Wow, this is some strong representation on something that came out in the '90s." I mean, I don't think I remember anything portraying homosexuals in any more than a ha ha sort of way, not any sort of real love, any sort of anything like that. And I thought that was very unique. And even watching it on the second watch through, yeah, I still get it, and I still believe that. I'm not sure that Karu is necessarily attracted to Shinji, but I 100% believe that Shinji is attracted to Karu. And I, I'm not entirely sure if we want. I don't think we can get down the road of is Shinji homosexual or etc. Blah blah blah. What I wrote down is he's getting unconditional love for the first time he has ever experienced, and this is what's just attracting him in every way, shape, or form to Karu. And I don't know if I could blame him for that. Regardless of what you want to say about anything else, he's experiencing real intimate love, and I understand why. Gary.
I was gonna say, like, I think it's the opposite way. Like, I think that Karu is coming onto him, but also you were talking about like that sort of character in the 90s, and I think it's because the 17 minutes this character exists, he's introduced to Shinji. There's some feelings and some complicated like what just comforting, and like maybe Shinji's like, I never thought about this, and it's like, surprise, you don't get to think about it again because you just murdered him. Yeah. I have a note here of introduction, sexual awkwardness, chaos, destruction. That is literally this character's timeline in the show. Like he's gone before you have time to think about it. Tyler?
So I will kind of split the difference there, Stephen, with what you were saying there a little bit of like, I can definitely see the homosexual kind of surrounding these two characters' interaction and everything like that. But then also too, I was looking at it from like the line Shinji had mentioned earlier that he feels he has no friends around anymore. But then all of a sudden, conveniently, there's this pilot there who happens to be humming. Was he humming Beethoven there at the time too?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of starts, as you said, kind of presenting this care and compassion towards Shinji just right then and there, and it's something Shinji has never even had, even from Masato, who is probably the closest he gets to somebody who actually cares for him in this entire show for the most part. Without, like Rei is, like, as we've always talked about, just kind of a monotone, just no feelings, no emotions. Asuka just constantly berates Shinji and stuff. The closest he maybe kind of got was talking to Kaji a little bit, but Kaji is an adult and he doesn't understand adults. Shinji doesn't. And so like when this character kind of comes out and just kind of shows care and affection towards Shinji, I can definitely see the both sides of how to view it and everything like that. Although I don't know which way I would ever even fall here either though too, because it's weird when you think about, like you mentioned there, Stephen, this was a show from the 90s that wasn't great representation in the 90s. So is that what they were going for, or were they going down like the more middle of the road of just being like, we're not going to really tell you anything?
Did you guys, I caught also, speaking of Shinji and Karu, that there was also a awkward tension between Karu and Rei, of like, and even Rei like contemplating her life. Who am I? What am I? And why does the fifth children seem familiar? Like, Rei's an interesting character, and I'm sure she's a whole other conversation about just emotional dumpster fire of being an automaton, but also just like, oh well, this new guy's familiar. He's kind of, I think he's like me, aka made in a lab, but I don't know. Steven?
I think that's exactly what they have in common. They were both created of Lilith. The bodies were, I believe, the bodies were at least, and then the souls were imparted into those bodies. JC, correct me if I'm wrong on that. You shot me a look there, and I'm not entirely sure I'm correct now.
I suppose
But
I hadn't considered what the body was created out of. I know he specifically tells Ray whenever they meet, we both settled on the same body type as the Lilin to survive in this world. But then, yeah, it is. We know that the soul is there from Adam. Yeah.
yeah, I guess I just assumed that when they said that would have come from Lilith, but that could just be a normal human body too. Honestly, I didn't really consider that. But one way or another. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, could you body morph and shape an angel, whatever the difference is that they're made of, that 99.8% commonality? Could you shape one to look like a regular human instead of a giant floating pyramid? Who can say?
No.
Okay.
Anyways, what I was going to say though is that sorry Gary, but what I was going to say is they do share in common. They're both souls transported into these other vessels. They are not naturally in any sort of state that we would say is commonplace. They're not born, raised, and die. That's that commonality that they have. No, sorry, that's what I was trying to say, Gary.
Amanda, did you have a comment on Stevens? I had a new question.
Less than a comment of his, but just a comment of my own. I wrote down while I was watching this, like how did they, whoever they are creating this, inject social charm into this guy after obviously failing to do that with Ray? Like whatever perfect mix they have of like super chill and super confident. Because even there was a picture at one point where you saw all Ray, Shinji, and Karu in their Avas, and like both Ray and Shinji are they have their eyes closed, they're focusing, and Karu is too, but he's always got this small smile, like he always just looks happy, chill, confident. This must have been a complete accident, is my conclusion, because clearly if they were able to do that, they would have done that with Ray.
So my answer there, and I'm going to lean on JC a bit on this one as well, is that Ray is a artificial soul, and Karu is the soul of Adam. They didn't have to create a soul. I believe they just transported the soul of Adam. And as I said, I'm leaning on JC there.
Well, Adam's pretty chill and confident then.
As you would be.
I know some things, but I'm not sure what I can say about.
I'm probably
based
wrong.
on the current episode stuff.
That's fine. That's
We
fine.
can discuss it when more comes up.
Yeah.
Like I said to everyone, I do not remember episode 26, so I am stuck here. But anyways, sorry.
Yeah. Episode 25 has a little bit of stuff. Just to cut ahead a little bit about Ray, and since she is involved here, during her moment there, you're a person with a forged soul made by the human Gendo Ikari, merely a fake object pretending to be a human being. So yeah, some sort of created soul that Gendo made is what Ray possesses, and we know that her body is somehow. Is it body and soul? Somehow is a clone of Yui, Shinji's mom. I can't remember what exact order that comes through. That if it's body and soul or both or one or the other.
I think it's body, and then I think the soul has just been like slowly catching up. Maybe that's how I feel.
Soul is also in Unit 1.
Yeah,
I was going to say, has it been completely clarified though that Shinji calls her mom? And,
I don't think so. I think we're all guessing.
I mean, yeah, we're taking a fairly decent leap there, and then also too, I always thought that Ray was like, because there was multiple scenes with Ray in that tank there with Gendo outside talking to her. I always thought that was just like Ray's uploading or dumping her memories into something, so then when she is cloned again, she's not starting completely over. But then again, I don't know, like, it's not completely clear how much this Ray remembers from previous Ray.
I also caught that I assume that somehow she has to have consistent memories, because the gig was be up is if you send her to school and she forgets who everyone is. So She doesn't need to know. She's very socially distanced, so that you don't really need to have her know a lot about her classmates, but she needs to know enough to get by. But I had a bonus question about angels, and that was before we got through all of them, they were all different shapes. They all were amoebas in different shapes, and so obviously this last angel is a man-shaped one. Is there some symbolism now that we know where all the angels are up to this point? I'm sure there's a super angel or
The
a
final
Jesus
angel.
or something.
Multiple life bars fill the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was trying to talk about when I even brought up the monstrosity of the angels in the beginning of these episodes. It was going to be kind of a burn to where we are now. The angels really go from monstrosity to at a point angelic, and then end at human. And I don't know if there is a specific reason for that other than I find it interesting to watch that progression, that change in the first angel being an absolute monster and then some of those being just absolutely horrifying, going to, was it the last one where they had the angel in the atmosphere that was just some just godly bright light in the sky, like what you would
Spaghetti
actually think of
monster.
as an angel. Yeah, spaghetti monster. Well, there was a spaghetti monster, but there's also one in the sky. Remember that shot the laser at Asuka?
Yeah. The Hallelujah beam. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay. I
And
black out some of these things.
so they're becoming more angelic, and then they end in human. And I don't know exactly what the entire intent is there, but I struggle to say that there was no creative intent in the way they designed these angels going through there.
Okay, that was all. I just didn't know if I should know more about we supposedly are at the last angel. Any other thoughts? Otherwise I have plot questions.
Go for the plot questions for 24.
Okay.
Hmm.
Asuka is finally told that Kaji is gone, and she is in a bathtub, and it was on the second watch that I caught that the bathwater was red. Is she committing suicide? Is she just having a panic attack? Did she just drop some Kool-Aid in the water? Because she apparently gets like the door kicked in by the police or something, and they're trying to find her. Steven?
So how I took that, and I had the same sort of scare, kind of terrified reaction that you had on the first watch with water. But my second watch is that it's basically filthy water, that she hasn't
Okay.
left that she has defecated and peed in it, and she just hasn't left it. She doesn't care anymore. And so the water is filthy. Her cheekbones are, showing. She hasn't eaten anything. She's basically wasting away out there in the most horrific sense of the way that you could waste away. And I
Is it
think she
explained where she is? She's not.
just in a ruin. I don't know.
Yeah, because the Tokyo 3 kind of was wrecked with the previous episodes whenever Ray detonated. And so I think she's just in some old dilapidated building, not necessarily old and dilapidated, but recently dilapidated. And yeah, just because we see like she's from the bathtub, she looks up and it's just like the sky is above her. The ceiling is blown away and gone.
Okay, that was my first question. Was like on the first watch through, I didn't assume she committed suicide, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
We
really
do-
confusing scene, and you felt
Yeah.
like, oh, the police found her. I was like,
Yeah.
should she be at like Misato's house, like having this
Well,
panic attack with other
yeah.
people around?
She didn't want to be around it. Like I think was it the last episode that we saw her where she was just like cursing about sharing the bathwater, sharing the air with all these people that she hates so much. And so yeah, now that she just basically wanted to leave completely after finding out that Kaji was dead, and just be on her own as she thinks that will make her happy. And yeah,
I would assume they just. Sorry.
We kind of catch the bit of Masato and Hyuga talking about it, like that, like, oh, they finally found Asuka. Now that we've already got the 5th children here to replace her. Weird timing. How about that? They lost her for 7 days and found her after we already had the replacement pilot. So there's that little bit of conspiracy about how Seal and the Instrumentality Council and their NERV all just kind of let her stay lost for a while, just in time to bring in Kaoru. But we do end up seeing a bit of Asuka later on. Whenever Unit 2 activates, they say like, "Oh, where's Asuka?" And it cuts to her just like wide-eyed in a hospital room. Just I don't know if that was like some sort of vegetative state that she's in at that point. I don't know.
Some
But
sort
we
of
see
mental
she's alive.
breakdown.
That's what made me think it was she was suicide, but that makes sense. She just like hadn't eaten. She was dehydrated and
Yeah, I honestly thought either that it was dirty water or that she'd just been sitting there and like had her period and was in filthy water. And sorry, Gary, of all the other stuff that we deal with in this episode, I saw your look.
I'm just grossed out. I mean, it's a completely legitimate explanation, but I wasn't prepared for that. My mind goes to lots of dark places, and that wasn't one of them. I just was surprised that they left her unfound, because you would think as a military asset, they talked in the last episode that she was replaceable, so I would just assume that she'd been replaced. Like, you don't need, she's a useless military asset because she can't run the mech. So I just assumed they'd let her go. So it's even surprising to me that NERV went to all the effort to find her, because she's useless. She's a useless military asset at this point. I mean, she
wonder if
went
they actually
AWOL.
ever lost her.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I assumed they didn't. Yeah, I was pretty sure they knew where she was. I am interested though that they actually found her. Like, what was the reason behind doing that? Did they still have a use for her?
Yeah, we see
Bring
a
her in.
small bit in episode 25 that she's back in an Ava
Mhm.
for some reason. She doesn't even know why. So someone's got a plan for her.
I thought that was a fever dream. I didn't think that was real.
And it
We'll get to
could
that.
be she thinks she is, but yeah.
Okay. I had a cicadas question, and that was, did anyone else catch that
Yes.
the control room has lots and lots of background chatter happening? As I said, I was watching this in like 2.1. Both watches of this, of 24 and 25, I watched in 7.1 surround, and it scared the crap out of me the first time, because there's like control room chatter happening in the background, but I assume it's configured in 5.1. So these chattering noises are coming from behind me when I'm alone in my house at 1 a.m.
That's fantastic.
So very, like, on the first watch, I was like, and I paused the show and I was like, well, it stopped. And I hit play again, and by that point the chatter was gone. And I was like, this fucking show.
So,
and it's
so you're aware, your house is haunted, and that was, you never look over your shoulder. If you hear someone whispering over your shoulder, just don't fucking look.
Don't ever say you'll be right back. What are the other rules? No Scream fans? All right. Scream podcast coming to you soon from the Rewatch.
Oh,
Oh god.
don't have sex. Don't
There you go.
don't say I'll be right back.
don't split up.
Right. Anyway.
Don't drink. No drinking either. No drug use. Is probably Scream's a good movie. Highly recommend it. You should definitely watch all of those movies instead of watching this.
Oh my gosh.
Better life decision.
Get out of here.
What else do you have, Gary, for
See,
plot
okay, hold
questions?
on. Steven, how many
No,
or how
no.
much of any of the Scream movies have you seen? Steven doesn't
Seen
watch
most of them.
movies, so
We have so much to talk about with Eva already.
yeah.
Let's
Okay,
stay on track
anyway.
here, Gary.
Sorry, Steven's
all good.
criticizing
Yep.
a good horror movie, and I cannot allow it.
I've seen 0 of those movies, but let's just keep going.
I also have seen 0, but we'll move on.
JC, it's just you and I who enjoy Scream, I guess. Anyway, continuing. This scientist lady, Ritsuko, is apparently crying in a room in a chair by herself, and Gendo comes in and confronts her about destroying all of the Rei clones. And so apparently she's in timeout or in NERV jail for destroying them. And then Misato goes and visits her later. But is that explained? Is she just in like confinement, or she just?
Yeah, that was my read on it. That yeah, she was basically in NERV prison. That they were holding her as some sort of military prisoner, and she destroyed property. She destroyed the dummy system, and as she said, like, no, I destroyed Rei, but Gendo keeps saying, nope, why'd you destroy the dummy system? So they find out when Misato finds out where she is, they even say like, oh hey, we were digging through these files and found out where they're holding Ritsuko. So.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they throw that out as real. Yeah, I hacked into the intelligence, and I'm like, you hacked into the intelligence? Boy, were they not very well secured for intelligence files. And also, are you probably next to land in NERV jail?
Hyuga's resourceful.
They're already in the control room for giant military mechs. I don't assume that too much information is hidden, other than that there's a mutant in the basement. I guess they didn't know there was a mutant in the basement.
I guess I just assumed with top secret military organizations that they all like to keep everything secret from each other, since that's how they already operate.
I was about to say, this is pretty compartmentalized, right? Everything's compartmentalized.
Yeah, in the very beginning of the show too. I remember like when Misato was like, oh, so they use scenario whatever to explain what was happening to the people. Like they don't really refer to them now, because now all the students know what's going on, and whereas before everything was secret from everybody.
Yeah. And most people moved away at this point. And that's why part of the reason how Shinji's friendless is like, oh, Toji and Kensuke, they've moved away. They're all gone. Pin's going to live with Hikari and her family who have moved away.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe they just gave up on the keeping it top secret, and maybe maybe his hacking was really, I'm just gonna go look at the J drive quick and see what's on the shared files.
Right.
Fine.
Secret prisoners do not open.
No, what's that one folder everyone always calls something? New folder or something.
New folder.
when you're hiding something or whatever on your desktop, like homework or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've covered that Ritsuko is in secret NERV jail. What there was a whole conversation with Gendo where she's like crying and you're not going to use me, and I just like, my mother, I'm sorry mother, and I just watched that both times. I was like, I don't want to fucking touch this, the 10-foot pole. Like, maybe somebody else can explain, like, if there's deeper meaning. I assume that she had a sexual relationship with Gendo or something.
Steven? Yeah, that's pretty much it. She had a sexual relationship with Gendo. Gendo used her and lost her, and she got upset about that, killed the Rei's clones, as basically to get back at him, is how or not really to get back at him even, it's because she was mad at Rei, so that was almost independent. So she killed off Rei, and then gets back into that scene, and then she's like, oh,
why is she mad at Rei?
Because Rei is the one that basically she feels took the affection away from Gendo.
I was gonna say, Ritsuko has a real complicated relationship with Rei. Like, her mother maybe murdered Rei number 1.
Yeah, that's so now
Gendo was in love with her mother, and then in love with her. And I think it was a conspiracy theory in the last episode. I'll still hold strong that Ritsuko was dating Gendo while he was dating her mother. I'm gonna hold it out there. Still believable facts.
But it is anything is possible with Gendo, and but that is it's kind of a human. Yeah, it's a human tragedy story there. It is someone who was sexually used and then discarded when they were no longer of any use. And she's having a mental breakdown because she was discarded and she has devoted her entire life to this one thing. And now it's, where is she at? She's at the same place where her mother was. And what did her mother end up doing? Throwing herself off a metal awning. So.
Or shot. We don't know.
Yeah.
At the very least, we know that her mother ended up killing Ray, and what does she do? She says that she destroyed Ray. So
Mhm.
Oh, it's interesting
Mm.
parallel. I just was curious if there was a deeper understanding of that conversation, or it was surface level. They were
It
jaded
was
lovers.
human. It was
yeah,
human.
yeah. Gendo is asking, "Hey, why'd you destroy the dummy system?" She's like, "How come you don't want to get with me anymore?" And he's like, "No, but really, why'd you destroy the dummy system?" She's like, "Well, use me." And it's like, "All right, well, this isn't going anywhere." And she's like,
Okay,
"What
so
am I supposed to do now, Mom?" It's like, all right,
that
everybody's
puts me
having a
at
rough time.
6% of understanding on the first episode. It was just surface level understanding
Mm.
of jaded lovers.
Yeah.
Repeat just clarification. Maybe it's in your. What is the Marduk Institute? Is that
That's
the
sorry.
what?
The Marduk Institute is the institute that originally had gathered all these children that were candidates for the
That's what I thought.
children, and then was like not even a real institute, and ended up collapsing and being brought into Seal, I want to say.
I want to say it was basically sealed the whole time. Like there was
Yeah.
supposedly this institute, which was being used to determine who would be the best pilot candidate among these groups of children. But really, Seal was just making the picks all along. So Ray was always going to be the first children, and then Asuka was always going to be the second children. Shinji always the third children. Like they knew of these kids, and it wasn't that like Toji might be one of the only pure like selections that wasn't somehow predestined from an early age, because we know that Ray has early ties to the whole Eva project. Asuka has her ties from the fact that her mother was part of a contact experiment. Shinji's mother was part of a contact experiment. All these things have these specific children tied to Eva stuff from an early age.
Okay. Uh,
Cleared right up.
yeah, clear it right up. I heard them talk about the Marduk Institute. I was like, I think it's you basically that it was a fake selection firm that existed under NERV to make a false understanding of how the children are selected. So also there was a comment that Seeley made NERV to created to put our scenario into action. More of the shadowiness of pronunciation.
All of them are valid.
Yeah. Uh, just their shadowiness.
So there is a little bit of clarity that I found on that aspect. During the flashback episode, whenever we're being kind of getting the recap, I think it's episode 14, that is specifically shown as a human instrumentality report. It could be a different episode where this happens, but it's a slide that basically says, like, hey, here's a report from the Human Instrumentality Council to the United Nations as one of the, basically, to clarifies that the Human Instrumentality Council is a subset within the United Nations. And so they are kind of the public face of who is kind of controlling NERV and doing this sort of thing. Sele is a separate shadowy thing that is actually running everything, including the UN. So they're basically, whenever they meet in public as the council, that's why they're showing their faces, because this is supposedly a actual council that exists in reality. And Sele gets the sound only monoliths because they are working from the shadows. Ultimately, they're all trying to make the instrumentality thing happen. It's just that Sele is doing it as this shadowy group and kind of using their puppet strings to have the council controlling NERV to make this whole thing go into action.
Okay. The last thing I had was apparently, God, kid's name. Karu was talking to Sele. Like he could see them projected in his head because Masato looks at him like a scene later, like he's talking to himself. So somehow, like, obviously he's God or something, Adam, and he's able to communicate with Sele like via hologram.
I had it in my head that they created him as a clone and they could put machines in his head.
Okay.
I don't know that there's an answer there.
That is all I had. I caught that in the rewatch, is that he wasn't actually talking to himself. Like, those were supposed to happen simultaneously. And apparently he has super godlike hearing and can tell that Masato's watching him.
Because it does seem like he's talking in live time. I know from some of the tertiary stuff that I've looked up, like that it's theories are that it's either it's him replaying a previous conversation that he has had with the Sale Council in a more typical fashion, or it could be that yes, he has some sort of remote capability to talk to them. Another more confusing theory to me is that he's actually somehow communicating with the previous dead angels, the ones that we have seen die in the show, and he sees them as the seal monoliths. Let me also clarify. If you want to get into the online stuff after this and start looking into like the Eva Geeks wiki and things like that, I straight up think that they have some misinformation on those wikis. Like there are things that, like,
Ooh.
as we're looking through, shots fired. Come at me, Eva Geeks. At JCFDI on Discord. There are parts when I'm piecing these things together whenever they're saying like, oh no, this is definitely what this means. And it's like, I don't think that's the case. So it's still plenty of room for interpretation, even after you are digging into all the different theories. So those are the current theories. There's no solid answer on what exactly is going on there.
Okay. But that is all of my notes. So does anyone have anything else on episode 24? I know Tyler said he was gonna react.
So the only thing that I have else on episode 24 is when Karu goes down into the shaft and has Shinji basically fight the machine or fight Unit 2 the entire way down, kill Unit 2, and stop him and say, I'm glad you got here. I'm glad you came here to stop me. Thank you for doing this, because my purpose, who I am, this is my purpose. It's to return to Adam. And in doing that, I would destroy all of humanity. You stopping me is a choice, and he almost makes it seem like a choice that he can make. He can make that choice to just end it all here. And in doing that, he's not going to fulfill his purpose, but he's okay with that because it's going to save humanity. And that's what we talked about, this grace thing earlier. But it's interesting to me that this embodiment of Adam is attracted or wants to go back to Adam. And as I have in my notes, Adam to Adam. It was a play on dust to dust, but and that makes me wonder if all these other angels were somehow separated from Adam. At some point, were they all torn off of Adam and they're all trying to get back to Adam by the first impact or the second impact? And that is why they are coming back one by one, is they're just trying to get back. And that is their purpose. They're not trying to kill off humanity, even though that might be the end of what they end up doing. They are just trying to get back to where they belong. It was just something that I found interesting that I was just wondering about, and I didn't know what you guys thought.
I'll let the others talk before I chime in.
I guess I'll go here. Could you repeat the question here, Stephen? I thought I had it in my head for a brief moment, but
So I'm just wondering if you think that these other angels that we've been dealing with the entire time are just like Adam. They are portions of Adam that have been ripped off, and the reason why they're trying to get back to Adam is just exactly what Karu is trying to do. He's just trying to join with what is him. He is trying to become whole, a one again. And in doing that, it would wipe out humanity. And he is the only one of the angels that really has a choice in saying, no, I'd rather save all humanity and myself in myself. And I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, is kind of my question.
I think I get kind of what you're talking about there, but I would say, and referencing back to a line from Masato there when she was questioning if the angels get to Adam, does that mean the third impact will occur? And Gendo says no. So their driving force, I think, was to free maybe what was Adam, but I don't think. I mean, this probably gets into the whole thing of what are the angels originally from and everything like that, and I don't think they're a full part of Adam trying to get back to Adam, but they're trying to rescue Adam or free Adam or what is perceived to be Adam there. Gary?
I did not go at all that that deep. I just was like, oh, well, this is angels and they want to get to the mysterious underground. Yeah, it just I'm sure there's a reason, but yeah, just I didn't dig that deep. I mean, it makes sense. Interesting theory, but yeah, it was I didn't go that deep, Steven. You're digging deeper than the rest of us with your love of Beethoven and all these other things.
I could play it right now, I would. For everyone. It's not copywritten anymore. Sorry.
Point of clarification on the I think the scene that Shotzi was mentioning earlier was Masato. They're basically when they need to go get the spear of Longinus from down in Terminal Dogma, and I'm gonna keep saying Longinus. Sorry, Stephen.
I hate
that's
it.
how they say in the show. So they mentioned that like Masato says you can't send an Eva down there because if an Eva contacts Adam, that's going to be third impact, and that's whenever Gendo just doesn't say anything about like no. That's when she's questioning. Well, and if an Eva can make contact with Adam, then that must be a lie that Eva can't make contact with. That's not going to be the actual cause of third impact. What we're now finding out, if that's the scene you're referencing, is that Gendo is completely right there that an Eva going down and making contact with the being in Terminal Dogma will not cause third impact because Evas are made of Adam, and the being down in Terminal Dogma is not Adam. That's Lilith. So that won't be a third impact situation because the Evas are not returning to Adam.
Is it the Evas is it the Eva that is actually called out though in that scene? We are talking about the same scene there. I will say that, but I thought Masato was talking about angels though making contact with the being in the basement, not Evas.
But I think the point that JC was making still does stand. It's and I think you're right. I do think he was saying angels personally, but that regardless, the angels are trying to make contact with Adam, and that's not Adam though. So Gendo's not afraid at all because what's going to happen? They're going to make contact with something that's not even Adam, and then everyone's going to go, well, fooled you, aha.
Mm-hmm.
You got punked. Ashton Kutcher's going to come out around the corner and whole camera crew.
Oh, shit! Did you see that, bro? Sorry. Anyways,
Man, did you have any thoughts on the angels' purposes before I?
Lots of I like your guys' theories and points. I honestly, what I've learned most in this show, when I was telling Steven this before we watched the episodes, is like I'm learning to stop like trying to guess what's going to happen because I keep doing it constantly. I keep in the middle of an episode, specifically episode 24 here, when Ray is standing over just looking at Kara, and I was like, oh, she's gonna do this. Oh, she's gonna do this. Oh, she's gonna do this. Just I just need to watch and see what's gonna happen because I am driving myself mad making 100. I keep expecting them to act according to a completely different rule book, and it is just not happening. And then I can talk to you guys, and you guys have totally different insights that I didn't even notice.
you guys think that the other AT field came from down in Terminal Dogma, the one that just appears and then disappears?
I assume it's from Ray.
Same. I'm on board with that.
I didn't formulate that until the second time we watched it, and I was like, because they're like another AT field, and I was like, crap, what's that come from? And it goes to Ray, and then I'm like, Oh, they basically literally pointed it out to me.
Mhm.
It's my only conclusion I can come up with there. That's the only one. The rest of them, I was like, yeah, Ray's gonna do this. Ray's gonna come with a superhero punch. Ray's gonna jump in and or call out to you and be like, no, I'm here for you. You have friends. No, just wait and see what happens, Amanda.
Because we are told it is another AT field of equal power to the soul of Adam appears in Terminal Dogma. So Ray's forged soul is pretty powerful, apparently.
And has an on-off switch for her AT field. That's impressive.
Is it this episode where we yeah, Karu describes what the AT field actually is?
Yep.
That's so many freaking notes. It's hard to.
Yeah, that was pretty high level over my head. I was like, I remember him describing it, and then I was like, it's a force field, duh.
It was your heart. It's your heart.
Yep, the sacred light of the heart. It's
Yeah, I was like,
to me. I take
okay.
that as like just that unconditional love that humanity is very rare to give to one another just freely. That is that hedgehog's dilemma, that unwillingness to let other people in, and that yearning to be comfortable and safe in some way by shutting yourself off in some way. Because I don't know if we've discussed what AT stands for much, but it's part of the intro sequence. If there's as we get to the final episode, there's a lot of fun little things in the intro sequence. If you catch the frames there, it is the absolute terror field. So the thing that, as Karu says, like, oh, it's the sacred light of the heart. We humans call it the absolute terror field. The last thing, the most terrifying thing we can imagine is
Oh, I
just
hate the name.
completely open up ourselves.
I hate it. I hate the name. Yeah, I think in my head I was like, it's a force field. What more is there need to be said? And then I didn't actually question the word AT field. I just figured it stood for something either boring or
Mm.
I don't know. I was also thinking, I think of like something from Star Wars. Was it the AT-ATs? I don't remember.
Oh, there you go.
And I was like, well,
Phaser.
yeah, duh. Yeah. It's like, no matter what, it's a force field. I don't like absolute terror field. I don't. That's awful.
That's one of my favorite little things, just like getting to that revelation between how Karu sees the AT fields versus how it's presented on the human side of things.
Sorry, I came to this late. AT field stands for absolute terror field.
Yep. But what Karu describes as the sacred inner light of the heart, what that unconditional love, as I interpreted it, humanity has decided it needs to be called the AT field, the absolute terror field.
Whoa. Sorry, audience. I walked away and got to only listen to this conversation for the last couple of minutes, and I got absolute terror field. I'm like, what?
I feel that happens when Gary walks in a room.
Only in short shorts. Anyway, yes, that's just. I'm learning things as I walked away for a second. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry. Back to I was gonna mention to Steven's original question too, the concept of the angels trying to get back to Adam. Karu's kind of phrasing whenever he's standing in front of Lilith is like, must those of born of Adam return to him? And it's like that's his nature, his calling, his drive, and I feel like that is what the angels I feel like have been trying to do. They almost don't even necessarily see humanity as anything more than just an obstacle. They're not necessarily trying to see them as an enemy like Shinji forces himself to see them, like the others have told Shinji that he needs to see them. Shinji has questioned it a lot of like, are they really enemies? Why are we fighting them? And in some senses he was right that if they got out of the way, angels would just go right on through. And of course the downside to that is another situation happens where humanity is doomed, so they have to fight, they have to be enemies in that sense. But otherwise I don't think the angels necessarily are trying to do it in spite of humanity or against humanity. It's just nature, more or less. Like they are gonna, their nature is to go back to their source from where they came from of Adam, and if humanity perishes, that's just a consequence that is not necessarily even in their understanding or care at that point. Stephen?
The last thing I wanted to point out on that specific topic is that is one of the classical differences between angels and humans in biblical references is angels have no free will whatsoever. They do what they are instructed to do, and that is it. There is only one angel that ever had the idea of free will, the one that's in the center of hell, if you believe some of the other dogma. That'd be Lucifer or Beelzebub, however you want to pronounce that. I can't remember the damn angel name that he had for the life of me.
Basil
Basil Boss?
That just might be a Tenacious D thing there.
Was it?
I've never heard of that one before. But anyways, that was humans, though, have the ability to choose. And that is the big difference between humans and angels. And that's what got Satan so upset in the end, was that why do you give humans the ability to choose, but you don't give us the ability to choose? We're obviously perfect. Why don't you blah, blah, blah. And so it's interesting that the angels don't necessarily have any choice in this show, and the humans have all the choices. They can choose whether to let the angels through or not. They can choose whether to fight. And it also makes me wonder about Karu in the end, who says he does have a choice. So that's my last point. Sorry.
Being a terrible, not non-church boy growing up, I knew that, yeah, Lucifer's a fallen angel. Got it. But yeah, the difference of envying humans for their free choice almost, and then Karu deciding that, oh, humanity is actually worth saving because they have all these other things going on, and then making that choice. I never knew those parallels. So
cataholic, bro.
Okay, did we have? I mean, I know this. We keep talking about various points from this episode. Is there more stuff to keep talking about here?
I don't have anything.
yeah, I feel like those are the big plot points.
I mean, there's lots of little tiny details, but we covered a lot of random ones.
Mm-hmm. So do we think we're good to move on to episode 25?
I
think so.
All right, JC, hit us with episode 25.
Episode 25, Do You Love Me or The Ending World? Shinji, pained by his choice to kill his friend Karu, shuts himself off from the world and reflects on his true purpose in life. Instrumentality begins.
So
sorry.
I was going to ask just a random question here. At the end of episode 24, it says next time on, and then, like in the next time part, it's like air. It calls the episode title air? Or is that just like something that like...
Interesting.
Maybe I'm not...
Air is the first part of End of Evangelion. So
okay.
I wonder if the director's cut intends for you to watch End of Eva first. I never heard of that watch order. Let me rephrase. I've heard of that watch order can make sense if you put End of Eva before TV series 25 and 26. However, I did not know that there was the next time on thing would straight up allude to that.
Yeah, like I remember it was like, okay, air. So is that just the alternate name of the episode? And then it got there, it's just like, that's nowhere to be here. And then I'm like, well, did I? And then I'm like secretly going, oh shoot, did I have the wrong episode title here? Am I secretly going to watch episode 26 and then just have no clue what's going on when we podcast? But so I will just open this up to you guys because, like I said at the beginning here, that this episode, and I think we've kind of alluded it to, it's just like there's stuff going on. There's a lot of talking going on, and I am just like, okay, what is going on?
Well, real quick, the very first thing that happens in this episode, it starts with a conversation between Masato and Gary's here, and Gary wants to say something, or not. All right. Well, we will get back to Gary. Anyways, it starts with Masato and Shinji talking on a shore and Shinji is saying, why couldn't it have been me? Why couldn't I have died? And Masato says to him, Karu craved death. He wanted to die. And it's only those with the will to live that go on. And then it cuts to the words raison d'etre. Raison d'etre is a French way of saying the reason for existing.
Raison d'etre.
And then d'etre, yeah. Well, raison d'etre. Anyways, and it keeps, I guess, there are a whole bunch of different things, and one of the last ones is the captions say, the reason it is okay to be here. And that prefaces everything that follows. This is about the reason it is okay to be here. So, Gary.
I didn't catch anything about raisins in this episode, but
Yeah, you missed a lot.
fruits and
Grandma.
prunes and
Grandma got raisin cookies and we were good.
yeah. I had a more of a question for anime watchers in general. For this entire episode, it's more relevant. Is it normal in anime to have a conversation exist between text and audio of two people in a dialogue where one person is only speaking in text and the other person is only speaking in audio? Is that normal in anime?
I would say it's not. It's maybe not normal, but I wouldn't say it's super uncommon, especially if you have someone dealing with inner demons.
Okay, because that's what that was my feedback on this episode in general, and I just was curious if it was something that was normal in anime, because as this episode talks a lot about chaos and mental struggle, the jump back and forth between reading a sentence in 2 seconds and then going to audio and then going back to text and going to audio is maddening. Like, it absolutely put me in the mindset of going effing insane. So I didn't know if that was intentional, if it's a normal anime trope, or if it's literally to drive me nuts. So I was just curious if it's normal in anime or if it bugged anyone else, because it bugged me a lot.
Like I said, I don't think it's particularly normal, but I think it's an artistic choice, and I think it does well to personally show the inner dialogue happening. There's not someone talking, and you could have him facing himself on a train again if that's what you wanted to talk about, but this is a different way of the universe judging him and the universe being through him. Tyler.
And I will say, just to echo, of the anime that I have watched, this is the first time I believe I have seen something like this here. So, JC?
I'll say, first time for this framing device for me as well was this series, and only case. And it's unfortunate that the Netflix subtitle situation is what it is, because I don't know if anybody, like, I typically would watch the show in English dubs and have the English subtitles going so I could catch little differences there. This is a terrible episode for that, because it's the way that the subtitles are, it just, for some reason, just won't translate some of the cards sometimes whenever it's the unspoken voice, which is what I don't know if we have a reason or a specific name for it.
For me, it was only Asuka's. There's
Okay.
a very specific section that I didn't get any English.
She has a lot of very quick
dubs.
ones where it's like anxiety, fear of separation, attachment. It's like, all right, just really quick stuff where it's still important to me to see what that says. If the creators want to put it on screen, I want to see it. There's even in episode 24, there's a bit where Karu says, like, it means I like you, and then it cuts to the title card. But right before that, there's a couple flashes of text. It doesn't translate that at all, and no matter what I did for the setting. And I tried to look it up, like, hey, what flashes on screen? I have no idea. I can't find it. But yeah, so it was.
I didn't know
situation.
if it was because Asuka is in German. It's not in German, is it? It's all in Japanese.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Wording.
Yeah.
But
honestly, if it was in German, I'd have a better chance of being able to read it.
Right.
Gosh, only you. But anyway, did that obviously it put me in a different mindset for these episodes, and I think that was why I really didn't want to rewatch this episode 25. Did it, or was it just like, reading and then talk reading? It it was very unsettling to me, and I didn't know if it was a artistic device to make the audience unsettled.
I think it was also unsettling and intentionally in that way, because even if it's not necessarily a unique thing to this series, I think the way that it's approaching it by sometimes the cards are just hammering home points that they're trying to say, like, you're afraid, you're afraid, you're afraid. And it just keeps popping up over and over again as the characters that we see and hear are trying to defend that they aren't. And all these different ways that they're trying to kind of fight back against the cards and the judgment that is happening there. It's it is unsettling in that sense alone. And I like the way that it's framed in that sense, that it is like, almost as Steven said, it's the universe kind of judging you. It's not necessarily the you across the train this time. It's larger than that. Steven?
I agree with that, and I think that one of the sorry, I agree with that, and one of the key things too is how impactful it is when you see just on the it's accusatory. It's so, are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? And you get this sense of feeling that it is, because you don't have a voice associated with it, you don't have any character associated with it. It's what Stephen King actually talked about when he was writing or when he was having the walk, or the Stand.
Shining?
Sorry, no, the Stand.
No,
When he was
no.
when he was writing the Stand and it was going to be interpreted, he hates when his books are changed into movies, because when you have text on a screen or text on a book, you, the viewer, interprets that in the way that you feel it should be interpreted, and it could be 100,000 different ways of 100,000 people show it. The second you put a voice or a person saying that, it gives it feeling, it gives it this one specific emotion, and it takes that away from the viewer. And I think in this way, when you see that accusing word come up there, you read it in the way that is the most accusing to you as a viewer. You don't read it as the way that the filmmaker thinks will be the most accusing. You read it, that is the way it's going to be. It's going to be accusing, and you're going to read it in the most accusing way possible that you can think of. Gary?
Also, along with like my general frustration about it is, as I said, on my second watch through, I had a spouse in the room who wasn't paying attention. Like, it was just on in the background, and it's very noticeable if you just get audio, and my wife's over there on her phone or whatever, is that it's literally Shinji shouting at the screen and answering questions that aren't asked. It is much more chaotic because he's just like shouting responses back at the audience with no audio questions. He's just going insane. Like, and that was another feedback I had, and above and beyond my hatred of reading. It's just like the episode only as audio is even more chaotic. So anyway, that was my number one point, is I hate reading, and this episode was just emotionally and plot wise just chaos. But yeah, that was any other points? Otherwise I had random plot point questions, but this episode's just
I have a
chaos.
lot of interconnected things, so I don't know if people want to go in front of me or if we want to go on my little my tangent, or we could go on a wild wilderness chase with Steven.
I ended up pulling a Tyler for the second episode, and I just kind of gave up on the notes because it's like I didn't even know what to write. So I was just like, I'm just gonna take this, react to it, maybe have the smart people a little bit tell me what's going on, but I don't want a full explanation either. Like, I'm really curious to see what the next episode comes along. So I'm fully willing to go on Steven's wildness adventure or whatever we're doing here.
Okay, it's
Okay.
either so Steven has wilderness adventures. I have just plot point questions. So which one do you want first? Dumb Gary questions or Steven's wilderness adventure?
Tyler, do you have anything before separating
No,
the two?
I literally
Alright.
wrote down stuff here. I mean, the only thing, it was just like, and No, it's just it's a scene that it's a couple of scenes that happen, so it's just like more, I think, plot point questions or whatever. So I would probably say let's start off with Steven, since we gave Gary the floor the last episode there.
JC?
Floor is yours.
No, yeah, I'll have flavor to add and everywhere. Yeah.
All right, so we start off with it's not the case of, is it the case of Shinji
That's the
that it starts off?
first
That's
case.
what I
Yeah.
thought with. Yep, the case of Shinji. And what he is struggling with is at first, wasn't he as human as you? We have seen that Shinji is loath to kill humans. And he will not, even if it means his own life, he will not kill humans. And he is put in this philosophical dilemma of the train tracks. He can kill one person and save a whole bunch, or he can let that train go and kill a whole bunch of people, but he has to pull that lever. And so he is put in the situation where he does pull the lever and he kills one person, and now he's struggling to figure out, did he kill that person? What is his role in that? Did he save people? And why should it have been him that had to die? Why was it Karu that had to die? Why couldn't it have been Shinji that died? And he is fighting with himself, saying, well, he wasn't, he was just an angel, and so you killed him. And I guess that is one of the other things. The Japanese I guess not subtitles, but the Japanese, wording is a little bit less aggressive than the English wording when they have the text printed. But the Japanese voice acting is much more scolding than the American voice acting. So there is trade-offs between both of those there. And I think and that's why you killed him, and that's why you killed him in the American version. The Japanese version is, and so you killed him. It's just like a statement. So just a bland, like, and so you killed him. Well, it wasn't for this. It was blah, blah, blah. And so you killed him. And he's trying to get around that fact. He can't get around the fact. And then he starts going to, well, is this what I just am? Am I, when it gets down to it, I mean, I kill these people, blah, blah, blah. Am I just a pilot? Well, and all I want to do is good. And then Asuka comes out and says, well, yeah, that's why you're selfish, because you're just doing good to make yourself feel good. And that's another philosophical point there is, why are you doing what you're doing? Are you doing it to make yourself feel good, which is inherently selfish? Am I going out and giving the person on the side of the street $5 so I can go, fuck yeah, look at me, I'm a good guy? Or are you doing it because that guy needs it? And what Asuka is basically saying is, you are doing that, you're helping people to give yourself validation. And that is probably true. It is, Shinji is being selfish in that regard, and so is Asuka, as Rei is quick to point out. Asuka is doing the same sort of idea where she is trying to get validation from everyone around her, and that is also a form of being selfish. She is also trying to close off her world to everyone around her. So that's, I mean, also, I don't know, the closing off the world, I didn't have too much to talk about personally. But what it gets down to, we self-examine Rei as well, and Rei has a conversation with herself, which I found very interesting. Shinji has conversations with other people and with no one. Asuka has conversations with everyone. Rei has conversations with herself, and that is it. And so they're all have these different forms of self-insight that they are looking at between each other. And what it comes down to is Rei, Asuka, and Shinji all define themselves based on the views from other people. Or as I believe Rei specifically says, connections are what makes you the person you are. And in that, it is what we talked about, I think, 3 episodes ago, in that I exist on this podcast right now in 5 different forms. I exist in how I perceive myself. I exist in how Tyler perceives me. I exist in how JC perceives me. I even exist in how Gary perceives me. And I exist in how Amanda perceives me. And so in each of those, go for it, Gary.
You were talking about perceptions of people in the fever dream. I had a note here and asking. I didn't notice the first time, caught it the second time. Asuka's outfit changes in the early fever dream between casual around the house outfit to
Yeah.
like battle mech gear, and I didn't know if that was to symbolize how the conversation or how the tone was. She was talking to him as a nasty brat teenager versus talking to him as a coworker.
Like
I don't
almost
think
every
so.
flashover, like
It
she was
does.
like in a really casual, like light dress, then she went to like her school uniform, and
She was in a different
I didn't
outfit in every single one, and I
really.
think that's yeah. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to show it's not temporal. This conversation isn't limited by one time. You're not having a conversation with Asuka. Asuka's not right there. This is some illusion of Asuka that is not bound to time. It's all over the place.
Okay, so there's no. You were saying that's all three. That's 3 or 4 different outfits. I just saw the casual like PJs around the house, and then like battle mech suit. But you were
I
saying
think
there's like a school
PJs.
outfit.
She's school
She's in
outfit.
a
She's in
towel at
her
one point.
towel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which personally,
Oh.
when she's in the towel is my favorite scene because she's in her towel doing her accusing point, which is typically like the most like peeping Tom scenario of just like get out of here, you pervert. But it's this great line: "You are in a convenient symbiotic relationship, and that's dependency." That's like a very like academic accusation to be leveled at whenever someone's just in a towel.
But it goes down to who are you without those links, without all those links. And that's what I think every one of the pilots is trying to understand throughout this scene, this first scene, is if they are separated, if they have these portions of their heart which they might not have entirely connected yet, which we will talk about. Who are you if you are separated from everyone else? If you are in a cosmic void, if you are in the black of space when somehow you're able to breathe and whatnot, but there's nothing around you to define yourself, what are you? And you're nothing. You can't define yourself because you have no connections from which to define yourself. And that's what they're kind of struggling with, is how I took it personally. Then it gets to human instrumentality. I don't know. Do we want to hit this part and then hit human instrumentality when everything starts phasing?
Maybe maybe keep them a little bit divided here. Any questions from things at this point, or is it all so clear?
yeah, not in words so much questions. My questions are big question marks. That's all I got. I'm enjoying
can add
Steven's
some.
rambling though.
I can do a
Not
little bit of
rambling. I'm
rambling
sorry.
on
Coherent
these other
thoughts.
parts.
I was excited that Steven caught that there were multiple different outfits because I didn't catch that on the first watch through, that it's a mini dress, it's a school outfit, it's a towel, it's the battle mech outfit. So thank you for adding some context to but the outfits have no real context to the conversation, correct? It's just like flashes in time.
As far as I understand, yeah, they're all just kind of like they're the pieces of Shinji or the pieces of Asuka that Shinji has in his mind. It is the time whenever she was in a towel at the apartment and yelling at him. It is seeing her in the plug suit just around the office. You know, just all these different parts of Asuka that is in Shinji's heart. Because it's this. What do they say every single time? It's the maybe it's part of the part later whenever they're saying basically like I'm the Shinji that's in Asuka's heart, and that you're and you're that part of me. Like they're the parts of hearts connected, essentially discussing it together. Yeah, it could be later. Anyway, for some of the earlier parts, though, we do catch that bit of Unit 2 being underwater, like clutched in a fetal position, and Asuka is also inside, wondering what she's even doing in there. And we don't know if that's full fever dream yet. That's just something that is where she's talking to the Eva, saying like blaming it for being faulty. Like I'm in this thing, I can't even pilot it. It's faulty. No, I'm the one who's faulty. That's whenever it's like we get to Rey interrogating her about that. And then we end up shifting over to Rey. The three Reys in this scenario, the young Rey appears in multiple different ways. We see first she is the young kid Rey that we saw get strangled. We also see her appear as this sort of deformed head, floating head, which we have seen whenever Shinji was sitting in Unit 0. That's the Rey that appears in Shinji's mind as he's trying to synchronize with it, and it's this disembodied vision of Rey that appears to him. And so I don't know if that's some sort of shadow of Rey that's within there. My read personally is that we know that Evas need some sort of soul. Some part of Rey's soul is also just inside Unit 0, and they were able to salvage some sort of Rey soul and put it inside Unit 0 after she was killed by Naoko. And that's why she appears in multiple different ways, that is the same Rey within there. But just one of those little things that I caught there. One other little piece there as well, as they're talking about things, they keep saying like, "Who are you, Rei Ayanami? Who are you really, Rei Ayanami?" At one point, the text even reads Rei Ayanami. So I don't know if we've previously don't really get any sort of semblance from the text about who is speaking until this moment. That's the only time that the text also says Rei Ayanami. I don't know if the text is saying that's who they are. But that's just one of those things that stood out to me is watching it multiple times. It's like this is the only time that we get any sort of identification from the text as to who's speaking. Gary?
Yeah, that Rey scene is super confusing because you sense that she's talking to young, like child self. And what I got out of that was that her mission is to serve, like she almost sounds like her ultimate goal is to not have to be reborn again. Like she's just looking forward to the last time she has to be cloned. And the only reason she seems to keep going is that she serves a purpose. And she's really hoping that Gendo will just let her not be reborn again. But she only does it because she serves a purpose in Gendo's. And that kind of shadows back to like why she's kind of soulless early on, is like she doesn't need to be social. She just is there because she's a tool that will get Gendo to the last angel and get to the third impact. Like she's just a chess piece on the pawn. Steven's gonna correct me on chess terminology, but whatever. She is a piece on the board. As to what piece, I'm sure she's a rook or something like that. Like kind of weird, jumps 2 forward, 1 to the left, and does not make sense in any other characters in the chessboard. Rooks just do weird shit. Anyway,
That is a knight.
Steven.
That is a knight.
Oh, the
But
rooks are the castle. Poop.
yes, they
Okay, yeah,
are
I meant knight.
exactly.
Thank you. I acknowledge that I named something wrong. I haven't played chess in like 10 years.
That's
Anyway,
fine.
you're up, Steven.
So, no, I agree with you a lot about Rey. That she is being instrumentalized, if you want to say that. She is a tool being used by Gendo, and she talks about at the very end of this portion of the scene, she can't wait for her purpose to be fulfilled so she doesn't have to come back. She can go into the Oblivion, but now she's scared. Does she really want to go to the Oblivion? As everything is coming to a head, she's not sure she wants to die anymore. And it is that's got to be absolutely terrifying, having waited your entire time for that, and then it comes and you're like, is this what I want? And I think the last portion of this entire scene that we see is Gendo coming and saying, it's time. She gets up and they go, and we do not know to what purpose.
Is that in real time? Is that like in real time in this episode? Or is that part of a fever dream? Like, is part of Rey's like previous selves? Like, is this a conversation that already happened? The
Great
two people
question.
who have actually seen this show are giving us shitty, non-explanational looks.
So as I will come to in the next portion, I think that all of this is variable. I don't think that any of this is a one specific reality. I don't know if we can say for certain that any of this has really happened.
Okay. So what percentage, group question, what percentage of the episode do you actually think is real in real time? I would say the conversation on the seashore between Misato and Shinji, and then everything else is just like Shinji having his mental breakdown, Misato having her mental breakdown, Rei somewhere having her mental breakdown, and Asuka having a breakdown maybe in a hospital bed.
I think it
Tyler?
is real to the person. Oh, I'm sorry.
So I was going to say, point of
Hold your
clarification,
finger up,
Gary.
motherfucker.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Point of clarification, Gary. Are you saying that every scene where they're sitting down being questioned is real?
No,
there's-
that all the questioning is completely in Fever Dream. Like the only scene that is actually happening and not in someone's head is the two people on the beach.
So that's the
Everything
only
else
scene.
is
Everything
yeah.
else is a fever dream. Okay. I just wanted
Everything
to
else
ask
is a
that for
fever dream.
clarification. Go
Okay.
ahead, Stephen.
I think that is the only scene that can be said to be definitely real. I would say that everything else has an element of reality to it to the person who is experiencing it, whether or not that reality is the end reality. Maybe that's different. I do think that Gendo coming to Rei and saying, "Come on, let's go. It's time to start the project." I personally believe that is real. But everything else is so varied, so different. I couldn't say that conclusively.
Yeah, I'd echo Steven's thoughts that the Gendo and Rei moment feels more like a memory, if not a live current view of what's actually happening. But it does feel like a moment that happens if it's not exactly set up like a stage play, like it is there. But it is very much that Gendo and Rei have their moment. You existed for today, Rei. And then that's when the title card comes up. Thus, the instrumentality of humanity begins. So I really think that is a moment there. Gendo and Rei begin instrumentality somehow.
Okay, that's our final explanation. In the middle ground of watching the episodes, was anyone confused as hell? Like, I was like, maybe Misato and Shinji are like in a one act play classroom where they're watching these like holograms on the stage try to explain the human instrumentality project to Shinji, and I was like, whoa, this is real deep, man. Like, this is some crazy explanation of the science I don't even know.
And at some point, they were all dead too, weren't they? I'm sorry, Tyler.
Not yet.
Kaji
Well-
exists too. He's the only specifically dead person.
Well, I
Tyler?
think, Amanda, you were referencing the scenes where you see Ritsuko and Misato having what
Yeah.
seems to be blood around them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right. They were shot.
So, again, whether or not that's happening, I don't know. I will say, like, this felt like a character dissection of each of the characters there. They were being asked questions kind of more reflective of where they are at this point in time. Like Masato is having to reflect on like her life and her choices with Kaji and everything like that, and how she seeks comfort in others. Shinji is being questioned why he's here and everything like that. Asuka was questioned more of, it seems like, I'm kind of drawing a blank now on her. It was more like, why is she the way she is, maybe? And then Rei is just kind of having that philosophical who am I kind of conversation with herself. So I understood that. My problem then comes to of like, okay, where is this happening? What is going on here? Where are they? And then also to, is this even real? You know, Is this just a fever dream that everyone's having, or has something happened to now they're all in this ethereal state there of consciences happening and merging and all that stuff? Are the hearts combining and all of that jazz?
Mm-hmm.
But I like we've kind of talked about, I was just kind of like, I don't write anything down because I'm just like, I don't know where this is going on at or anything like that. I don't have anything to share kind of with the larger group here other than just reacting to what people say about it.
Oh, that makes sense. And I mean, that leads us to the second part, really, and that's human instrumentality begins. And the first thing that we see is Shinji saying he feels his body melting away, that he is expanding. I don't know if you want to say expanding into the universe. And then they start, it's a conversation between Ritsuko and Misato that it brings us to, where they say parts of your heart are hollow. Instrumentality, the goal of instrumentality is to bring all those hearts together so that no heart is hollow anymore. So you're all full and you're never going to hurt anymore. And Misato yells, "Who is it you to give this to take this power? Nobody said yes to this." And before we get to what that leads to, I think that the simple version of how I see this happening right now, and like I said, I cannot remember episode 26, so this is a guess. Is basically this is a creation of a hive mind, is how I see it in sci-fi terms. Whether you want to get from like the Forever War or the Expanse or the Foundation series, it is a big sci-fi clique that, especially in the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 50s, whatever, every major sci-fi thing had to end with some form of shared consciousness or hive mind or something to that effect, because that's the only way that you could perfect humanity, because there was going to be something else out there and humanity had to be one whole to be able to face it going forward. And that's what this feels like to me, is that this is a play to make humanity one whole. And in that one whole, solve humanity's greatest problem, which is the hollowness in their heart, and the resetting it basically to where it was at the very beginning before they lost whatever portion of the heart they lost. And that I'm a little unclear about.
I actually also, I'm happy to hear that you also thought of Expanse. I was totally thinking that, but not the series we're here to debate.
I don't know what that is. Anyway,
The
It's a
Expanse
great
series
series, Gary. You
a
should watch
sci-fi.
it.
does it exist on a streaming service that has its in its
Amazon.
entirety?
Amazon.
It's on Amazon Prime. No.
Highly recommend.
We can trade must-watch shows. I can get you
This is
to some
fine.
of the
This is
evil things.
acceptable. I have the books if you would like to read them.
No. Hard pass.
Go ahead.
I can't remember where it was at, but at one point there's a Shinji conversation that has train car bump noises, and that was another like just background audio in this show is just something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what context it was, but I think it was just like out of nowhere of this fever dream. There's like train car noise, and I was like, gosh, this show and its background noise. Specifically, out of all the fever dreams, I think I was the most like intrigued by Misato's because it goes into her what?
Well,
Sorry.
real quick, I don't think we've gotten into those three cases yet.
Okay, you can. I'll jump back to Misato's then later. You have the floor.
I say before we get to the cases, there was one part where the cards actually tell us what instrumentality is as well. Just to fully fucking read it here. It was the beginning of the instrumentality of people, the parts of themselves they were missing, the hearts that became lost, the fulfilling the emptiness in their hearts. The instrumentality of hearts and souls begins, returning all to the void. The instrumentality of people begins. And then we get the great shot of Gendo. Incorrect. We are not
Yep.
returning to the void. We are simply returning everything to where it started. Yeah, and that's whenever we get those flashes of Ritsuko shot in a pool of LCL, Masato shot against a wall. And he says, all hearts become one, attain eternal peace. There's nothing more to this than that. So yeah, I agree. The hive mind theory, some sort of collective consciousness, it seems to be the goal here.
I just walked away from that whole and I was like, things, sci-fi stuff is going on.
I don't know, just something about Gendo right up there, just being assertive to
Yeah.
me. I don't know. I felt like I could have surpassed Ray in his mind. I don't know, something about it. I'll give it a
I
shot.
think that. Well, I think it's interesting that we come from the first section was all about how do you define yourselves? You define yourselves based on how other people see you, the connections you make. And then we talk about, well, we're going to create a hive mind to fix all that. And in a hive mind, in this collective consciousness, do you have other people seeing you? Do you have those connections anymore? Because you're one. You are one solid whole. So you have no more connections. You have no more anyone to define yourself based off of. And so I find that an interesting conundrum there as to we've just talked about this is the way they do it. This is the way they know that Rey is Rey. Rey is Rey because she has these connections that tell her she is Rey, regardless of what soul she has in her or what body she's wearing. You know that Shinji is Shinji. Shinji is Shinji based on his conversations with the people around him. Same with Asuka. When you come into human instrumentality, when you have that collective mind, the collective soul, whatever you want to call it, you're not going to have those connections anymore. So you don't have Rey, you don't have Asuka, you don't have Shinji, you don't really have anyone anymore. You don't, and that is maybe bringing it back to the start as what Gendo is saying. Seems a little bit more terrifying than what he thinks, but yeah, we do hit the cases. I don't know. Do you want to do the cases, JC, or?
I sure could. I don't have any fascinating insights, and definitely no quantum math coming up that it sounds like you have. But yes. Yeah, case one in the case of Mitsudo Katsuragi. Shinji's Piers Masato, my heart isn't just in me, my heart is inside Miss Masato's heart. And at the same time, my heart is inside Shinji's heart. Is that it? That's the phrase that we get every single time. It's no longer these separate things. It seems to be this melding of things that you're coexisting both as who you are and who others perceive you as. To me, that sort of serves as the central crush here, is like that reconciliation of like, are you able to be identified as, are you comfortable being identified as the person that people see you as? Are you wanting to fight that identity? And so Masato, she goes back into wanting to be a good girl for her father who was away, and all these things about her daddy issues, for lack of a better term, where she wanted to be with Kaji because she saw her father in him in some ways, and also in some ways that desire to be a good girl drove her. She didn't want to be a good girl because she felt abandoned by her father, and even by Kaji, in a sense that she keeps saying that like all all men just seem to just tell you what you should be and then just go off and abandon you again. So she, at one point, we see a lot of scenes recontextualized in this later fever dream case moments, where we see the moment from their drunken walk home at one point, and she is now upset, saying like, just mess me up, make me filthy, is what the subtitles say. And Kaji, who, as I mentioned, he's here. I don't know how life works in this whole process here, because we know Kaji's dead, but Kaji still exists in people's hearts. So is Kaji back? Gary?
Clarification: is that conversation happening in the timeline of this show, or in like their original dating conceptuality? Because I thought it was the original time they broke up 10 years ago. Are you saying that was actually the drunken walk home in a previous episode? or is it like
I believe that,
the
yeah, it
original
was.
version?
I believe it's the same art as that previous Drunken Walk Home. I could be
Okay.
wrong.
See, I thought that was like when they originally broke up, so it gave me a different context to that whole conversation.
Yeah.
Steven has a question too.
Not so much a question, but I just wanted to kind of keep going on. I guess with Kaji, I would say that the reason why Kaji's not dead is because Kaji still exists in people's minds. The interpretation, the vision of Kaji that we got is still in everywhere. And as Henry Morgan said, uh, a man is not dead while his name is still spoken. And I think it's very clear that everyone still remembers Kaji. And so he is not dead for these people. He still exists within them somewhere. His heart still exists within these other people's hearts, even if he himself physically may be dead. I did also, real quick, find it interesting that Masato is constantly trying to basically hurt herself to get away from her father. I think that's what what you were talking about there was Kaji says to her in that little dream sequence, that you're hurting yourself for momentary relief, and that's not the way to continue. And I think that is true. She wants to be dirty. She wants to be unclean, specifically because that's hurting her and that makes her separate from her father. So those are just mine.
Yeah, I think the English line is you shouldn't try hurting yourself simply because you don't like who you are right now, and that's like her self punishment. That's the uh, the flogging process, just like beating your own self up. At that point, it's she's not feeling happiness for herself, and so this is her way of punishing herself for that. And the card ends up asking her like, "What is happiness? Are you happy?" And she keeps insisting that she is until the point that she breaks. She's not happy, and eventually says like she's not. This isn't the real me. I'm just convincing myself it is. The identity of like the major in NERV who's got it all together and all that stuff. That's just a front. That's not me. Uh, Eventually, her own voice starts to come in and tell her, "You just want to be bathed in cheap thrills. Your heart's suffering. All this stuff. You're just using men." We even catch a glimpse of that Shinji moment that Steven and I uh, broke some minds with before, of just like the hand touch. And as she's discussing like using men for cheap thrills, we see that Shinji moment that like sort of cements that there was some sort of overtones there. I think we even get a cut to Hyuga, who has had some moments where there's been some illusions of a relationship going on at this point now that Kaji's gone. And we get the also the central motif is the cards asking, "What do you wish for?" anytime there's a case here. And so after that, well, what could she be wishing for? Moving on to Asuka. Any questions on Masato's at this point? Gary.
I actually, well, first of all, obviously I had the wrong timeline of them breaking up or the conversation while they're walking. But going back to the one context that I believe in is I believe in Kaji, and I believe that maybe he was a nice guy when they originally met, because Masato says she loved Kaji because he was kind. So you get the sense that really they maybe had a nice relationship, but Masato actually sabotaged it. So conspiracy theory number 2, Kaji is actually a super nice guy, but he's shown as being a player and a douche because Masato broke his heart. And then in fact, he is as like he is actually a broken person too, and he portrays himself as a womanizer because he can't truly communicate how broken he is about like Masato breaking his heart, because they still obviously care about one another, but Masato broke up with him for reasons beyond his understanding about being too much like her father. And so, in fact, he's a nice guy, and he's just being that person because he doesn't know how to be around Misato any other way than to just be, like, just to crush her soul down because that's who she thinks she is. That's the only way she can accept his affection is as a total hornball. In fact, he's just the nice guy. In fact, you can't and no other. I don't know. That's my theory. I've got everyone dumbfounded because I think they all just secretly hate Kaji, and they love Pen Pen.
Well,
I do love Pen Pen.
Right.
Sorry.
No, I was just reflecting back on the fact that it's that moment whenever he tells her like, "Hey, don't beat yourself up." That's when she's like, "Another man telling me what to do." Like that's the moment where she, at least in this fever dream timeline, is saying that like, "Nah, that's not for me. I don't need that in my life." It's another point where I just, I need to define myself. Sometimes I'm worthy of punishment, and I don't need other people telling me what to do and having these identities thrust upon me before leaving me and deciding that I'm not worthy to be around. Because she ends up seeing, like, asking at one point, like, I didn't have it written down for this part, but deciding at one point that these men in her life are leaving her because she's not worthy, because she deserves to be felt like that she's not good enough anyway. So why not just be the worst possible version?
Also, the last voicemail is him saying we need to have that conversation we should have had 7 years ago. And I think the conversation was, why did we break up? It's because you remind me of my father. That's my conspiracy theory.
Gary, I'm touched how much you care for Kaji compared to the characters you usually choose as your favorites.
I just think he's misunderstood. He's more complex. If everyone else can be as much of a complex fucking murder train in this show, why do we give Kaji so much grief?
You're fine. It's just the characters that you're usually trying to tell me are misunderstood are usually characters like Ramsey Snow and or Bolton or whatever. So it's a relief to have it be Kaji, the guy who just cares about his watermelons growing, you know.
I will
Also,
also stay on the side of
maybe noted, no one has checked on those watermelons. Like, we have no proof that anyone has checked on these watermelons.
Shinji had one job.
No, it was Misato's job. She was
No, I
supposed to
thought
check
he.
on the watermelons.
Oh, I thought for some reason it was Shinji's.
I think he
That was
tells
both his
No,
Shinji in
he's supposed
person,
to
but then
tell
he
her where
leaves a
they are.
voicemail. That's
You're
right.
right. He was supposed to tell her where they are.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't because he never comes home because she's such a bad guardian.
True. Yeah.
Although real talk for Misato when she's like, I'm a terrible guardian. I'm like, oh, every parent's had that. You're fine. Every parent when their teenager runs off.
Anyway, now you can continue. That was I just needed to defend Kaji one last time.
Yep.
One
I
last time,
assume
never
he doesn't
again.
exist. I assume he doesn't exist in the next episode. Maybe he does.
I mean, if
But,
he's
you can go
involved
on.
in instrumentality so far, maybe he's got a shot. We'll get Kaji for the rest of the show.
You can go to case number 2.
Case number 2, the case of Asuka Langley Sorio. And they keep saying part 1 as well, so we're going to apparently revisit these characters later. We get more of the flashbacks. We also got one at the start of episode 24, where we see more about her mom hanging herself. Now we get kind of the full story. She's young Asuka. I'm going to live on my own. Don't need mom or dad anymore. I'm not going to cry anymore. Older Asuka's noticing she's still crying. We hear the bit of her dad and her now new mom, former doctor of her mother, talking about like, yeah, she's kind of a pain to deal with. I don't really like being her mom. And dad's like, but you are. And she's like, yeah, but I could just not be. And we get that moment where she's with that line that she said a lot in her dedicated episode, please don't stop being my mommy, which we previously had contextualized to be like, hey, mom, don't kill yourself. Now, to me, I read that as now like, hey, my new mom, my one chance to have a normal mom again. Don't stop being my mommy. Like, don't just leave me
Oh,
now. Uh,
I didn't
so that
catch that context.
Oh,
I did catch the context of like her very much saying to her new husband, like, "Oh, well, I will be your husband and you will always be your father, but I won't necessarily always be her mother. Like, it is optional for me to be
yeah,
her mother." And I'm
yeah,
just
that's
like,
totally fine.
"Whoa. This lady is really morally questionable, but I guess if she's sleeping with a lady's husband when she's dying in the next room,
Yeah,
all bets are off." But Steven.
So this is actually one of the points where the voice acting is super, super different between the Japanese and the English versions. In the English versions, it seems like the dad is like, "Ooh, that's kind of weird of you to say. You know, this is kind of iffy." In the Japanese version, he's freaking fine with it. He's just like, "Yeah, I guess you can stop being her mom." That's kind of funny. Like, oh, the dad in the Japanese version is brutal, absolutely uncaring. At least in the English version, he sounds like he gives a crap about his daughter. He does not in the Japanese version.
yeah, we get more images of Asuka's actual mom leading up to her suicide. Daddy doesn't want us, so we should die. Die with me, Asuka. Uh, we get it's a heartbreaking line from Asuka reflecting on it, talking about how her mother's face whenever she found her seemed so happy, and now she just hates it so much. She doesn't want to die. She doesn't want to fade away. Uh, she doesn't want anybody. No one's willing to protect me. No one will be on my side. Um, Talks about how painful it is to be alone. She doesn't want that anymore, though. At that point, uh, we get the card coming up. What does she wish for? Steven, go ahead.
I was just gonna, if we're gonna move on before Asuka. Sorry, if we're still on Asuka, that's fine. Sorry.
No, we can. Let's. Yeah, I was about to move on, so yeah, go ahead. If any thoughts on this Oscar moment, the case?
So one of it feels like Asuka. One of the things that we talk about in the case of Asuka is that she tries to live without connections. She tries to live without the people around her, and she keeps saying she can do this on her own. She can make it on her own, but it's so difficult. It's painful to make it on her own. And what we've just established before is that these connections are what define you. They're what make you who you are. And so she's trying to live with this limited version of who she actually is and who she's actually defined as. And one of the things that I thought was to live without these connections, and she's saying it's so painful to live without these connections, growing up with such pain, with such um, just limited knowledge of who you yourself are. That might be one of the, and I know I keep feeling like I'm defending her, but if you grew up like that, why wouldn't you grow up as angry and mean and just kind of self-centered and almost hateful towards the people around you? That's what your life has been. You've been in constant pain since you were a child because you just don't have any connections. You don't have anyone to take that pain away from you. And so just one more defensive Asuka there, I guess.
Yeah, with her first episode, I was a full turnaround convert of like, oh, Asuka's been through some shit. I get it now. She is not correct, but somewhat justified. And the more we keep learning about her, I think the more like it just keeps piling on that she might have had one of the hardest upbringings of this whole show. Gary?
I will agree. I was probably a little tough on Asuka because I assumed that it was a lot to do with her own mother. But then when you get the additional context of her stepmother being really a wicked stepmother, you're like, oh, like she didn't trade a a a, a mentally deranged, like someone who touched a evil artifact mother to a like secondary stepmom. She went from like uh, sci-fi confused mother to a like literally a mother who would send her off to boarding school. like did not like. So she's messed up. I don't appreciate the way she treats people, but it makes more sense of why she's like more of the personality of not like the craziness of her mom, but more like I can do everything on my own. Like I don't need anyone's, because both her stepmom and her dad kind of just gave up on her. Like she's too much work. She's too mature, which was a weird. I don't know. Maybe that translated weird, but the mature, she acts too mature, and I was like, well, if someone's acting mature, like you should respect them for being mature, but it's just acted like it's an annoyance that she's not more of a child. I don't know. The stepmom is just kind of a enough of a villain that I can give Asuka some forgiveness.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Asuka's growing up too is it's probably the most everyday evil in the show of their upbringings as well. Like, none of us here know anybody whose mom got absorbed by an Ava and then their dad kicked them out to live with a teacher for 3 years and then invited them back.
Speak for yourself, JC.
Like,
Speak for yourself.
You're not supposed to be talking about that. That's top secret. And then Ray, like, grown in a lab, and like, unless you're Homelander, and like, that's not things that actually happen. Like this, so this is like the moment where like you lost your mom, and now here's your chance for a new normalcy. Just saying that like they kind of don't want you. They're willing to jump ship at any point. As soon as you're too much, you're done. To me, that also then recontextualizes the whole conversation on the phone that she has with her mother in the previous episode too, where she calls and she has this bubbly appearance, but you can tell that it bothers her and she's not putting a lot of emotional weight into it. And you can see that it's now because as a young child, she knew that this was some sort of relationship that was tenuous at best. It's just essentially a front. The mother wants to engage with this, and so she's putting up the appearances, and as soon as the mother would not have any interest, it'd be over. Gary?
Conspiracy theory number 3. Does the contextual conversation of like what her biological dad and her stepmom have affect the way that she flirts with Kaji? That she thinks
100%.
that is completely normal way, and that obviously if her dad cheated on her mom when she was a vegetable, like the rules of age are not. All rules can be broken, bent.
Yeah.
Gary, I
So-
take away that's not a conspiracy theory. You don't get to say that as a conspiracy theory because that's just probably what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if kids grow up to model the adult relationships they have in their life, she has terrible models for that. So if it is just like, hey, your vegetable wife is in the other room, let's go to the supply closet over here. That's more or less, I mean, it's going to influence how you see relationships and what you consider an adult way to approach relationships.
What age does it say that her mom becomes gets attacked by like whatever?
I don't think we get a sense of what age her mom is, but I don't. Gosh.
What I mean is like if you talk about like before she got affected by whatever, did her parents have a normal relationship? And the answer is we don't know, or it could have been when she was a baby, and then, or he was in utero when her mom went crazy. Conspiracy theory number 4. She was actually in utero when her mom touched the artifact. I don't know how
Amanda's writing it down.
Contact. Yeah.
I don't bother with the details. There's just too much to explain. I just have tally marks.
Anyway, we can continue on. I don't know. Are we still on the case of Asuka?
I'll give my 2 cents of just I do agree that having the background makes me understand her a lot more. I empathize with her. I still think she's ridiculously annoying. She still, I suspect, if I went back and watched the earlier episodes when we met her, would just irritate the hell out of me. But I can empathize, and now I can see a lot more of the reasons for it.
Monsters are created, they're not born, but that doesn't mean they're not monsters.
Is Asuka also a diminishing return on screen time? Like, I feel like even these last couple episodes, she's, other than obviously this scene that was her own madness, like
She went down with her
does
sync time.
Yeah, as soon as she reduced sync time, like
Shouldn't
she's
matter
just
them.
not.
Shouldn't matter for us.
Yeah, we were not as mad that she was not. We wanted more Rei. We wanted more Shinji, more Kaji, more Pen Pen. Like, but you didn't care if you got less Asuka.
To an extent, I think it's a little bit of a play on the typical arc of a character. Typically, we see those reasons that they should be fighting and the reasons that they need to overcome their demons and their battles. And Asuka, instead, we see that here she is an ass kicker, and then we lose that, and we see it backwards how she came to be the way she is, and all these things, and we're just seeing her deconstructed. So we're getting that sense of that reverse arc. We already saw the climax of her Eva piloting life at this point. It's just she was doing great. She had high sync rates. She was the rock star second children, and now here we are just seeing her try and just rationalize who she even is at this point. So, and in some sense, yeah, it's diminishing returns of screen time, but it's also just because they are intentionally toying, I think, with the way that they're approaching that character in the first place. Any other thoughts on the Asuka section, or shall we get to the last bit? Steven, did you want to take it back for this, or?
Sure. I'll take a little bit of it, but mine's gonna get really out in the weeds, so we're gonna have to come back and people have to stop me. So the last portion that this says here is what do each of these characters want? And for Shinji, don't abandon me. For Masato, don't cast me aside. And for Asuka, don't kill me. And as they're saying this, these lights pop up on him, and you realize Shinji is watching this all as on a play. They're all on a stage for him. And he's like, wait, what? This isn't real? And then you have all these characters start popping up around him saying, well, what is reality? Is reality this? Is reality that? And one of the things that hit me, and this is where my quantum theory comes in, by the way, is we experience facts and with we define reality. And so basically what they're saying is that reality is a subjective universe that we experience, which is something that quantum physics actually agrees with, saying that there is no objective universe out there besides what you can view, what you can see, what you can experience. There is no other universe that can be physically defined based on quantum theory because everything's probability. So technically, what he is seeing, what he's experiencing, what each person is experiencing, they're creating their own worlds. It's not just their own hearts. They're creating their own entire worlds around them. And so it starts talking to all these characters start talking to Shinji and saying, well, this is what you wanted. Everyone's going to end up, everyone's going to die. No one was saved, et cetera, et cetera. And I think they start talking about this in one of two ways. The first way might be that he didn't want to kill Kawa. Oh my god! Thank you, Karu. He didn't want to kill Karu, and in not killing Karu, he was going to forsake the rest of everybody, so everyone was going to die. That's kind of a banal explanation that I don't. It's there. The other that I thought more of was in his want to. Basically, he says, well, it should have been me. I should have been the one that died. He is sacrificing his world, his relative existence, this entire universe he has created subjectively. And once he ends it, it ends for everyone. And even though everyone else's might go on or differently and just takes into no consideration the human instrumentality project because everyone's becoming one at the same time, his walling off of himself towards everyone else, his creating his own separate universe, and then him saying that his universe really isn't worth defending. It's not worth fighting for. Someone has to come save him. No one saved him. He is sacrificing all of that. He's sacrificing everyone in his own heart. All the people in his own heart are not saved because he wouldn't save himself. And it's that I don't know what that exactly means in terms of Masato or what that means in terms of any other character, because all we're doing is we're experiencing Shinji. And if Shinji can't defend his own heart, if he can't open his own heart to make it to repair, I guess, to reach out to others, and I even have on here, open your heart to others, then all those people within his heart will die. And he is responsible for that in a way. And that is a very, I don't know if it's a summed up telling of how I feel that last portion is supposed to represent. But he wished for a world where no one is saved. And no one is saved because he doesn't save himself. And that's what it comes down to for me, is by not saving himself, by Shinji not caring enough, and I shouldn't say not caring enough to save himself, because that makes it sound like he's just wasting away in a bathtub in the top of a building somewhere. He doesn't care enough to go out and try to save himself, and therefore nobody is saved. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
So I think from my perspective here, everything I can understand what you're talking about there, Stephen, with everything you just said. And maybe this kind of more is the problem of like maybe I drifted out a little bit too much towards the end of the episode there. But I kind of was taking it there at that point in time of it was more of a philosophical conversation, not they were having of like everybody's world is defined of the experiences they have in their life. And everybody's life has different experiences, so everybody's world is different. And that's kind of where everything just stopped for me as far as my view of how all this was. Is just it's asking the question of why is it's asking the question of basically your world is different. Why? Because of the experiences that you have in your life compared to everybody else. And I'm not saying like yours is wrong. I'm not saying mine's right, because obviously I don't know what's happening here either. But it's just I didn't delve that deep into kind of what was going on. And like I said, maybe it's just because again I need to probably go rewatch it one more time just to fully ingest everything that happened there. So
Tyler, I'm entirely fine with you disagreeing with me because I am not sure that I am right. So
I will say that for the slow burn on that blur was really good. I will say I appreciated Steven's read of how that line Shinji says, like, no, it's just a world where no one saved me, and that's what's causing this destruction here. Like that, it was harkening back to that he feels like he's not worth saving because he killed Karu. That making that connection, I hadn't done that. I was noticing that he didn't want to be saved, and I couldn't connect why. But I agree that is this something to me. I go back to the most classic hive mind, the Geth from Mass Effect, where they try and connect and form consensus on something. And to me, it's like it's that where they need to form consensus, but also there are some sections of the Geth where they can be siphoned off. They can go rogue essentially, and this almost feels like his heart was yearning for such a lonely world that it became siphoned off. He's no longer connected to the rest of things, and now he's basically dooming the people that he has within his heart, who are trapped in that AT field, for lack of a better word, and they are going to be stuck in that doomed world with him. That, again, another read to take onto it, and who knows what's actually real?
I like that
it's
read.
all confusing.
You're muted. Gary?
I was just mouthing. I don't have anything else on this episode.
Oh, oh, it's very
Uh,
different, and it's very difficult to try to comprehend in the very end there. Obviously, everything is set play. It makes the show makes a very detailed go around of the entire set and the entrance doors, the lights, the stage, and that everything is set up for Shinji to watch. And I think one of the last key things is maybe just something I'm thinking about right now. Shinji is watching this entire play on his heart. He is not an active participant in this play. He is an observer of what is happening in his heart. He is not actively playing a part within his own heart. And I don't know, it's a difficult read. And the subjectivity versus objectivity versus all that other sort of stuff, yeah.
This is kind of
go ahead.
sorry. No, mine's kind of a random thought. So if yours has to do more with Steven's, maybe you should go.
No, it was just kind of overarching thoughts of the episode of like the ways that this show is meant to deal with depression and stuff, and then you get into these things where it's like very much looking at how you perceive others, how others perceive you, and all this stuff creates your own world, and that's going to doom yourself or others if you're not careful. Like it's incredibly existential stuff if you're someone who deals with depressive thoughts ever. So it's very questioning in a way that hits me at certain times, especially the way that some of the characters' voice acting is done in these scenes. Uh, in a show filled with moments of voice acting, of anguished moments, these are some pained and anguished moments of voice acting in this episode.
I'll agree with that, and it's very introspective. As you watch this, I personally, I think about myself when I watch this sort of stuff. It's you look at the characters, how they're experiencing life, and it's not just all the the Gundam Wing stuff going on, right? It's when I talk to you guys right now, obviously, like I said, there's 5 Stevens here. And so how do I think about them? How do I think about everyone else perceiving me? And
Too many Stevens.
too many Stevens. Exactly. Too many Stevens. There can be only one. So Gary, I'm coming for you with a Highlander sword, by the way, buddy. Anyways. But it's interesting because I think a lot of people take on a lot of emotional weight that from your perspective as an individual person is everything's on you. And then when you take a broader view, when you start looking out and you start realizing your perception of yourself isn't the only perception out there. Your perception of yourself as a failure or as someone who doesn't know what they're talking about or can't do X, Y, or Z. That's not the perception that everyone has of you out there. Everyone has their own different perception of you. And in a way, that's terrifying because then what perception do they have of you? But it's also slightly comforting in that maybe people don't think you're as big a screw up as everyone else as you might think you are. Maybe the yourself in those other people are better than how you see yourself as, and how do you square that circle? It's very difficult. It's introspective, and it is. If you sit there and ruminate on it, it can bring you up or bring you down depending on how you run. Run isn't a big word, Gary.
Ruminate. Ruminate on it.
Ruminate's a good word.
So kind of adding on to Steven's point of how you kind of take all this anxiety and things of this episode, and I think I said earlier, like I took all this anxiety and then I felt like the show, all of the reading gave me more anxiety, and so I also like it was a tough episode for multiple reasons, kind of adding on what Steven said, like because it's very jarring in the way it's filmed, and you can't really get heads or tails. I think we all agree that like on a first watch you really get very surface level, uh and then on a rewatch you maybe get a little more, but it's still really philosophical. That it's just a you bring a lot of your own insecurities into watching this episode.
I had a thought a little bit, not until this discussion did I remember, but our conversations of like who you are, who am I, who is a person, and we talk about the connections, the way people see you. It just reminded me of like ancient Egyptians believed that like the soul was made up of several different like faucets. I'm sorry, Gary.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me, guys. It wasn't me.
All right,
And like
sorry, I was just excited that I got to do a boo history sign for someone other than Steven. So anyway, continue. Ancient Egyptians.
yeah,
You continue. Sorry about it.
they believe the soul had a couple different parts to it. Some of this knowledge I'm pulling out of a book that I read, and I don't know how much of it accurate, but I know there was the name, your identity was one part of it, your physical body was another part of it, um, your personality was another part of it. And it kind of reminds me of the same thing that you guys are talking about, like, are you this? Are you this? Are you this? Or are you all of these things combined? I know your shadow was another one of you. Like all of these things combined to make up your soul or who you were. Sorry, very different take there.
No, that's very, especially
History and yay Egypt.
and I mean, I don't even know if that's what they were going with, but I just think now
Right.
back on knowing that now, like thinking that we know there are parts of souls that are existing in this world. Like, is it being split up according to that? Is that why Rey doesn't have much of a personality? She got the part of the soul that is just the name side, and yeah, fascinating.
There's a bad Harry Potter pun in there about ripping your soul and becoming Voldemort, but I'll just leave it.
The closest Gary comes to a boo history for himself right there.
Any other comments on instrumentality as we've known it so far? Because we do get the closing then.
That says instrumentality will continue.
Well, Asuka says what's been shaped here is only one possible ending.
Yep, and
And
that's
the quest for instrumentality is to be continued.
one possible ending, and that is where I get what percentage of what we just watched was real. What percentage of what we just watched was a chance percent, and
Because, and speaking about quantum stuff, there also ends up being that the stuff is quantum until witnessed by an observer. And as we know, Shinji is observing that stage play. Is Shinji somehow one of the chosen observers? Is it that unspoken voice that we keep seeing in cards the whole time that is that observer? Or is that some other agent of this whole thing?
You guys were talking about the cold ending, and I will say that of all of the endings, this was one where I was just like, crap. Like, it literally is like, it continues. I'm like, crap, we can't go to the next episode. Like,
I was torn whenever we came up with the episode watch list, just because I knew that that 24 is a lot, 25 is a lot. Spoiler alert, 26 gonna be a lot.
yeah,
So in terms of how do you approach that, and like 24, we could have done a plenty long enough episode, as we found out already, with just 24. Just 25 could have been plenty long enough as well, but I think leading up into 25, you get that sense of 24 having a lot of the real world plot points answered somewhat. There are answers, whether they make sense, who can say? And then 25 starting to be this extremely esoteric philosophical moment where 26 is going to have a lot of that aspects as well. So part of me wanted to be sure that we had this little meeting here leading into 26 at least, so it wasn't just the 25 26 back to back and showing up to that episode with everybody at 5% on the battery level.
I will say it kind of was okay that we paired these together because you said like the 24 was a lot more just physical, like plot just going crazy, and then 2025 is a lot of like philosophical. If we broke up 25 into its own episode, oh my gosh, that would have been just like probably 2 Red Bulls before we start. Because anyway,
So on that note, I think are we good to go describe what we'll be watching next time?
I did want to
And
call
then
out
we have to
something
get
kind of
the-
interesting here at the end of 24 and 25 is like the end of 24, the next time on part is basically like pencil drawings and stuff like that, storyboard parts that you're watching. It's like none of this happens at all in 25 here. So I thought it was like a good kind of diversion there of what was going on. And then 25's next time on is just basically the slow pan up some document, which was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did skip. I did check out the next time on quick from 24, and yeah, that is absolutely this is the first part of End of Eva. So I'm curious what the original next time on was from the TV series because it definitely wasn't that. I'm sure. So fascinating they changed that.
Fascinating that they don't give you some sort of heads up.
Yeah, yeah. You think
Because
that like
I mean,
Yeah.
even Netflix zooms past these credits. They don't let
Oh,
you
yeah.
sit on the credits.
No. Yeah, but then definitely after 25, that next time on is absolutely foreshadowing the stuff that happens in 26. So we know that that's at least contiguous, and then yeah, the it'll be interesting to go to End of Eva after this because that's how I experienced it. I think there are certainly valid interpretations of watching End of Eva after 24. Some people say that that's an okay way to do it. I could go either way, but I'll be curious to hear your thoughts, I guess, whenever we get there. I guess before we move on to the last part, do we have any quick ratings, rating estimations on this one, on this set? I will say
24 is higher than 25. I'm guessing 25 is a 9 or 8.2 and 24 is a 8.7.
any
No,
real
these
thoughts? Going back, episode 19 so far the highest rated with a 9.3. The last set, episode 22 was an 8.6. Episode 23 was an 8.7.
I'm going to say, unfortunately, I think this would be 8.18. No. Let's say 8.3 than 8.1. I think this would be harder for people to get through.
8 I didn't 8.6 on the second episode no, 8.6 on the first episode, 8.2 on the 8.6, 8.2. Diminishing returns. It's just getting more difficult to watch.
Right. Yeah, so episode 24, 8.7, matched with the previous episodes, similar there. Episode 25, not even top rated, 7.9. That is,
Ooh.
yeah, it takes a dive there for that one.
Yeah.
It's, as we've noted, it's a hard watch. So,
There's
the
not enough
lowest rated episode
robots
since
or
the Fourth
monsters in
Children.
it.
Yep.
Would you say this? Sorry, I interrupted.
Sorry, it was the
second
lowest
worst
rated episode since the Fourth Children, episode 17. Whenever Toji is not whenever he becomes the pilot, but whenever it's the whole is who's the new pilot? Who's the new pilot? And Toji's just walking around being sad all the time. That's the 7.6 was that episode. So lowest rated episode since then. But coming up, we've got episode 26, Take Care of Yourself, or The Beast That Shouted I at the Heart of the World.
As we come barreling towards the end of the podcast here, too. Yep. All right. Any final things there?
I will say personally, I think so. We've talked loosely about the other Eva movie, Evangelion Death, which is technically in the version that's on Netflix, Evangelion Death True Squared. It's just basically the most recent version of Death. That is a 1 hour summary of the TV series portion, and it's told in a different order. As I've looked into it more, it's told in a separate order that's a little bit more chronological. So you actually start with scenes from the second impact and go on through that. Personally, that might be a decent addition to the watch. If I wouldn't say it's mandatory at all, but if, especially after watching 26, if folks want to go through something else as well before the next recording, that might be a decent way to catch up on
How
a bit of
long
the whole
is
series.
that?
1 hour and 9 minutes by Netflix.
Okay.
And I'll reiterate again, I am planning on watching those 2 movies that we talked about before we do the final movie here again.
Okay, so
So
for
we should
next time,
maybe-
we're just watching 26, and then maybe we're gonna go over the consolidated movies at some point.
So Death is the kind of summary movie of the TV series, and I'd say that one, the loose thought in my head is after we finish the TV series here, we can kind of talk about the TV series as it exists before we get to the End of Evangelion, because there was a gap in production stuff. So I'm not sure how much we'll have to say looking back on the whole series that we haven't kind of already touched on with separate episodes. But if anybody's looking to see after the end of 26, like, man, how did we get here again? Death might be a good thing to watch that's a little quicker than watching all the episodes again.
Cool.
Might be good to just write that down in the chat, just to order.
I'll throw that in.
You mean because I'll ask this question next week?
What are we watching? Yeah. Yep, I can throw that in.
All right. So that'll then probably do it for us here for this episode recording. Another long one that'll be so much fun to listen to and edit.
Yeah. How's it feel to have so many answers, guys? Gosh.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah, we know
sure.
so much. He's trying. He is trying. Man.
I mean, if
finally
only-
instrumentality. We know it's no longer a question of council stuff, huh?
All right. Well, that'll do it then for us here at this episode. We want to thank everyone for listening. Until next time.
Bye.
See y'all.
Okay. Well, now all the cameras work. Apparently, my computer can't handle.
You're the
Poker
new.
or video. You have two. You have a
You're the
choice.
new Nick. You're the new Nick. Your computer can't handle it.
I appreciate this camera blurred that so that young eyes didn't have to be corrupted.
There's always got to be one in every podcast.
Always got to be one. Hey, is my audio quality okay, at least?
Quality sounds fine. It's maybe a slightly bit
Yeah.
quieter. I was going to turn you up on my side, but
Yeah, I've been going like
My-
all over the place here with it. Feels like when I've been editing it, I've had to adjust a bunch of people sometimes, or
Well, I was listening to myself on the podcast. Like, I listened to the podcast today when you uploaded it, and
for my parts,
no,
I'm
it's
sorry.
I mean, it was actually pretty good. Everyone's voice sounds pretty good, except for mine, which sounded almost like robotic. I'm like, oh shit, do I need like different headphones? This doesn't sound amazing.
number one, listening to yourself is always the worst thing in the world.
That's fair.
So, and then number two, I mean, the perfect way to ever do a podcast would be all of us recording our audio individually and then me syncing it up in the editing software and stuff.
Oh, I can turn up the bitrate of this channel.
Oh, fucking do
What does
it.
that
Now,
mean?
now it's 128 kilobits.
How do
What
I do
does-
that?
How does it sound now? I did it for the channel because I have admin powers thanks to Shotzi.
I knew I couldn't be the only one.
How do I have more big gigabots?
You have
Just-
no
just by-
gigabits.
Just by being here. Now you probably are going to run into video issues just from streaming. Yeah. No,
Yeah, now
that's,
it's going to be. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see anyone, Nick.
all right.
Such harsh words. Just shooting fire today. Mostly because I probably was making fun of Beethoven, but that was because you dropped a Beethoven meme out of nowhere. And I was like, did he put this in the wrong channel?
Out of nowhere.
Just let it go, Steven. Let it go.
What do you think the song was that was playing?
Let it go.
Dun, 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 dun,
I thought it was a
dun,
church song. That's what I
I
said.
thought it
Steven
was Ode to
looked it up.
Joy.
I thought it was Green Day. No?
No,
I
so
hate you all. I hate every single one of you.
I thought it was Ode to Joy.
sorry,
I
that's
literally have even in
Pachelbel
my
is Green
notes.
Day.
It's Ode to Joy.
So,
yeah, this
Ode
led,
to
led-
Joy.
this led to a debate about how Christianity takes over all the songs. I couldn't
Ode to-
argue it.
what we were listening to was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, his last symphony, which in 1907 was taken by some Christian dude who was like, I like Jesus, and decided to make a new song using that song that all Christians now play in Ode to Joy. But Ode to Joy didn't exist until 1907 and was a fucking ripoff and should have been. Bach should have sued for, not Bach,
Wait.
Beethoven should have sued for
Not
copyright.
only did I think it was just fucking random, but you went like super music historian on everyone, and I was like completely over my fucking head. Did anyone else know that Ode to Joy was a ripoff of Beethoven?
I knew pretty
Other
quickly
way
because
around.
Steven
Oh,
informed
oh.
me almost right away.
Yeah.
And then he looked up and told me that he found the exact version of it, and I was like, that's nice.
Yes.
And then he
Did-
went and shared it with the rest of the group, and I was like, now you guys share in my joy.
Amanda, you don't seem joyed for whatever
The
reason.
nice thing is, when it's for this podcast, I know that at least you guys will have my sympathy soon, because you, whatever fact I didn't appreciate, will be shared immediately with you guys.
Tyler, at least please tell me you're recording so we have this as like B-roll.
It is recording.
Thank God. This is because I hate you guys so much.
Steven, I was so angry when you posted it previously. I was like, what the did he post this in the wrong channel? Like, I was just like, is this like a general, like, oh, like, that's
you
why
know
I was
what?
like pissed. And then when I finished the podcast, I was like, okay, now I have a reason to post something. And then I said, I finished the episodes. No one has to worry. I watched them twice. Also, what the fuck is Steven doing?
No. You did not say that. What you said, and I quote, was, I finished my second watch, also, fuck Beethoven.
I
Because I
think
thought
no,
this was just like a random post that you put in the wrong chat.
I think
No, it was not.
Steven, you were doing one of those describe the episode without describing the episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, and apparently it
My
didn't.
feedback, Steven. Here's my feedback.
All right,
Next
all right,
time
all
you post something very random in this group,
Oh,
please
was it
explain
random?
why it's relevant, because it just seemed random. It seemed
I'm
like
gonna-
the memes channel where there's no rhyme or reason. You just saw something funny and you wanted to post it.
Anytime I post anything now, I'm going to include a disclaimer for Gary with a caption of what is being happening in the meme.
So, Gary, you see here when they're pointing at each other, they're actually the same Spider-Man.
The John Madden of memes. Yeah.
There'll just be an asterisk underneath every meme saying, Gary, this does relate to the episode.
Okay.
I literally just took a drink. Thank you very much. The John Madden of fucking memes.
Okay, now I don't get the John Madden of memes. I don't. Fuck. You guys are just going over my head today.
Fun fact, Steven just about spat out his water, but like 20 minutes ago was the same thing Ari was doing because I gave her water and then I had her doll do something funny and she like spat out the water and choked on it and I was like, oh, now that I'm watching this, I'm like, there it is, like father, like daughter.
God, I'm gonna have some good B-roll stuff for after the episode here.
Oh, God.
What is John Madden? I just
He
thought
just
John Ma-
over explains everything. Oh no,
Yeah.
here's a guy. Whenever he runs, he holds the ball. Like just basic
Now,
ass shit.
now look at this guy. Now, what you're going to see here is this play is going to get 10 yards. When you get 10 yards, you get a first down. And if you keep getting first downs, you're going to get a touchdown. And that's how you win games, by getting touchdowns. And you're just
Oh,
like,
he's a
is that how
mansplainer.
football works? Yeah, I
That's
mean,
what it is.
Yep.
The
Also,
mansplainer
John
for
Madden
men.
is a Super Bowl winning coach. Like he's probably a Hall of Famer before he even picked up a microphone.
yes, he was.
So
That is
he
a true
can do
statement.
whatever the fuck he wants.
No, he
so
can't.
you
He's
just
dead.
Saying
need
he
to
can't
do
stop
it. He's dead.
judging. He did
Well,
more in
actually-
his life by your age than you ever will.
Wow.
Why is
the John Madden in my heart?
Why is Gary
I
just
don't
getting
know-
all so
I don't know
defensive
what
about
you're
John Madden?
Gary's very
Yeah.
upset about John Madden.
See,
Anyway.
kids, you wipe a
Oh,
football with a
Steven,
wet
if you-
towel, the ball is still going to be wet.
Steven, if you want over fucking explained football, the Andy's Toy Room version of the simulcast of the football game they had last year.
I've heard of that. I didn't actually see it. I heard it was kind of funny.
Basically imagine football, but then the commentators aren't the normal commentators. It's like, oh, well, this is like these are the rules of football. So like very over explained, but based on the target audience of like trying to get football into children's toys and then try to explain football like rules in a very
Don't-
children-esque manner.
Don't they have
because
like
the NFL
Slinky on there doing stuff and all that other things? And
Duke Kaboom did the halftime show, so
whoever that is.
it's voiced by John Wick. It's voiced by John Wick.
Keanu Reeves.
Reeves.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves.
You were right the
Keanu
first
Reeves,
time.
voiced by Keanu Reeves, and he's a Johnny Storm he's just a crazy guy, motorcycle guy who jumps things. So
Oh,
he jumped some buses during the halftime show.
fair.
Anyway, but over explained. So I feel like we wasted enough time.